Hi, I'm Emma. Before we start this crazy story, make sure to like and subscribe for more. You won't believe what I went through. In our cozy suburban home, my older sister Sophia was always the center of attention. Our parents adored her, and I felt like I was just the other daughter. One night, Sophia's jealousy went too far. I woke up to a cold breeze and a sharp sound. My heart raced as I felt my head and discovered my long hair was cut off and scattered on my pillow. Sophia stood there with scissors, smirking with satisfaction. "Sophia, what did you do?" I asked, tears forming in my eyes. "Oh, come on, Emma. It's just hair. It'll grow back," she said dismissively, twirling the scissors. I couldn't believe her cruelty. I rushed to our parents' room, desperate for help. "Mom, Dad, look what Sophia did to me," I cried, showing them my chopped hair. Our parents, groggy and annoyed, didn't seem to care. "Emma, it's the middle of the night. This is ridiculous," Dad grumbled. "Mom, you have to see what she did to me," I pleaded. Mom sighed and rubbed her temples. "Can this wait until morning?" "No, it can't," I protested, feeling overwhelmed. The argument heated up as Sophia walked in, pretending to be innocent. "I was just trying to help." She always complained about how long her hair was. "Help? You call this help?" I said, stunned. Our parents looked tired and exchanged worried glances. "Maybe she was just trying to," Mom started. "To what? Ruin me?" I interrupted, feeling the sting of injustice. The tension in the room was thick. "Sophia always gets away with everything, and you never believe me." My voice cracked with anger and sadness. "Emma, that's enough. We won't tolerate this ingratitude and disrespect," Dad said firmly. "Disrespect? I'm the victim here," I protested, feeling utterly betrayed by my own family. "Either apologize to Sophia or leave," Mom said coldly, her words hanging heavily in the air. "Apologize for being attacked in my sleep?" I felt overwhelmed by the unfairness of it all. I looked at my family, the people who were supposed to protect and understand me, but they felt like strangers. With tears streaming down my face, I packed a few things and left. The door slammed behind me, the sound echoing my broken heart. Alone and hurt, I stepped into the night, feeling the weight of their injustice. Little did I know, this was just the start. The road ahead was long, but I was determined to find justice. As I left my family home, I wandered through the dark streets with just a suitcase of belongings. Reaching Lena's apartment felt like finding a lighthouse in a storm. Lena opened the door, her eyes wide with surprise. "Emma, what happened?" she asked. "They kicked me out just like that," I said, tears welling up again. Lena let me in and offered me a safe place. As I told her about the night, her shock turned into anger. "Stay here as long as you need," she said firmly, but staying wasn't enough. I needed to be independent. So, I threw myself into work. My days started before sunrise and ended after sunset. I worked as a waitress during the day, a cashier in the evening, and walked dogs on weekends. It was exhausting, but with each paycheck, I felt more independent and determined. Mr. Jacobs, an elderly man with kind eyes, walked into the diner. He was known for leaving generous tips. One day, he asked me, "You're always so hardworking, Emma. Have you ever thought about a quieter job?" "A quieter job?" I asked. "Yes, my bookstore could use someone trustworthy to help run it," he said. The offer felt like a lifeline. Working at Jacob's Books wasn't just a job. It felt like coming home. Surrounded by the musty smell of old books, I found peace. Mr. Jacobs saw potential in me that I hadn't seen in myself. "You're meant for bigger things, Emma. Don't let this define you," he often said. His words stayed with me as I sat across from Miss Turner, a sharp legal advisor recommended by a bookstore regular. Her office was filled with books and legal files, showing her busy career. "This isn't just morally wrong, it's legally questionable," Miss Turner said, looking over my notes. "So there's something I can do?" I asked, my voice full of hope and uncertainty. "Yes," she replied, "but it will require work. You'll need evidence, documentation, any form of proof. It's your word against theirs," Miss Turner said, "but if we can prove a pattern of behavior, we might have a case." I left her office with more than just advice. I left with a mission. Back at my small rented apartment, I began documenting everything: text messages, emails, any evidence that could reveal how my family treated me. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed a plan to expose everything and make my family face the consequences of their actions. Nights were spent researching, and days were devoted to gathering information. I reached out to old friends, neighbors, anyone who could help build my case. I was meticulous, treating each piece of evidence like a brick in the fortress I was constructing. Document everything. Leave no stone unturned, Miss Turner advised during our weekly meetings, and that's exactly what I did. As the plan came together, I felt a change within me. I was no longer just a victim of my circumstances. I was becoming the architect of my own destiny. The girl who had been cast out was now ready to stand her ground and bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. Months of preparation led to this moment. My plan was precise, every detail carefully considered. The evidence against my family was a mix of solid proof and strategic tactics. I decided to start with Sophia. She had a knack for twisting things to her advantage, especially on social media. I watched as she posted about her perfect life, unaware of the storm I was brewing. It was time to reveal her true colors. Sophia loves the spotlight, I thought. Let's give it to her, I whispered to myself as I began my subtle campaign. I started posting old photos of us that seemed innocent, but the captions were carefully crafted to hint at a deeper story. One caption read, "Missing the sisterly love," which made people start to question and dig deeper. I reached out to mutual friends, sharing snippets of Sophia's behavior but carefully avoiding exaggeration. It wasn't long before whispers began to spread, and her perfect image began to crack. At the same time, I gathered legal evidence: old emails, voicemails, medical records, anything that showed years of neglect and favoritism. Miss Turner was invaluable, guiding me through the complex legal process. "The stronger your case, the harder they'll fall," she advised. With my evidence ready, I waited for the right moment, our extended family's annual reunion. It was the perfect setting, with the entire family present, an audience for the truth. As I walked in, the tension was palpable. Sophia greeted me with a fake smile, and my parents' hostility was barely concealed. Dinner was a blur of forced conversations and strained smiles. Then, as everyone settled into the living room, I stood up and cleared my throat. The room fell silent. "I have something to share," I began, my voice steady. I revealed everything: the haircutting incident, the years of favoritism, and the night they threw me out. Each word made the room more tense, filled with shock and disbelief. My parents and Sophia sat frozen, their faces a mix of anger and fear. "What is this nonsense?" Dad finally spluttered. "It's not nonsense, Dad. It's the truth," I retorted, holding up my evidence: photos, emails, and testimonies. The truth was laid bare for everyone to see. The room erupted into chaos, a mix of disbelief and anger. "How could you, Sophia?" one aunt exclaimed. "Emma, why didn't you say anything?" a cousin asked amid the turmoil. I called Miss Turner. "It's done. They know everything." "Good. I'll handle it from here," she replied. The wheels of justice were set in motion, and the chapter of that dramatic night closed. The facade of my perfect family was shattered, and legal proceedings began. For the first time, I felt a sense of closure. The road ahead was still long, but justice was finally within reach. The courtroom was a world apart from the chaos of the family reunion. Everything here was orderly, and the air was charged with anticipation. I sat composed but nervous as Miss Turner prepared our case. "Miss Turner, are we ready?" I whispered. "We've been ready, Emma. Today, justice will be served," she replied with a reassuring smile. The judge called the court to order, and the silence was deafening. Miss Turner began with calm confidence, laying out the facts of my case with precision. She presented the emails, photos, and testimonies, each piece of evidence driving home the truth of my family's deceit. My parents and Sophia sat with their lawyer, their faces a mix of anger and fear. Miss Turner recounted the incidents, including the night Sophia cut my hair and how I was thrown out like a criminal when I sought support. The judge listened intently, occasionally nodding as Miss Turner spoke. The courtroom was captivated by the unfolding story. When it was my family's turn, their lawyer tried to downplay the events, calling them simple family disputes. It's just sibling rivalry, he argued. Siblings rivalry? I blurted out, unable to keep quiet. They left me homeless. The judge warned me to control my outbursts, but I could see the sympathy in his eyes. As the proceedings continued, the truth became increasingly clear. In the end, the judgment was swift and fair. My parents and Sophia were found guilty of emotional abuse and wrongful eviction. The gavel's sound was like music to my ears. I was met with a crowd of supporters and media. My story had caught the public's attention, one of family betrayal and a fight for justice. Emma, how do you feel about the verdict? A reporter asked. Relieved, I replied. The weight of years has lifted off my shoulders. And hopeful. This isn't just my victory. It's for anyone who's faced family injustice. In the weeks that followed, I used my story to advocate for others in similar situations. I spoke at events, joined support groups, and worked with Miss Turner to assist those facing family legal issues. My life had taken an unexpected turn, but I embraced it. From the depths of despair, I had emerged stronger and more determined. I found peace not only in the justice served, but also in knowing that my story could inspire and help others. As for my family, they faced the consequences of their actions. Their once perfect image was shattered. I didn't take pleasure in their downfall, but I felt a sense of closure. Looking ahead, I knew the road wouldn't always be easy, but I was prepared for whatever came next. The toxic people in my life had received their comeuppance, and I, Emma, had found my triumph. And that's the end of Emma's journey. But here's a question for you. If you were in Emma's position, would you have chosen to legally confront your family or taken a different path to find closure and move on? It's a tough choice, filled with emotional and moral complexities. What would you do and why? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, so please share your opinions in the comments. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring more content like this to you. Thanks for watching and engaging with our story.
I never thought I'd find evidence of my sister's betrayal while cleaning out Dad's study. But there it was, tucked between old tax returns and forgotten birthday cards. A letter that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Avery, and until last Sunday, I was just another landscape architect trying to launch her own business. Now I'm someone who has to decide what to do about a sister who's actively trying to destroy everything I've worked for. The letter was in Mia's familiar loopy handwriting, dated just 3 weeks ago. I know you're worried about me, Dad, it read. But I promise this will work. Avery's too trusting. She won't see it coming. Once her business falls apart, she'll finally understand what it feels like to fail at something. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down in Dad's old leather chair. The musty smell of his cigar still lingered, even though he'd quit smoking months ago. Outside his study window, I could see Mom preparing for Dad's birthday dinner, arranging flowers in the garden like everything was normal, like my sister wasn't plotting to ruin me. My phone buzzed. Speak of the devil. Hey sis. Mia's voice was honey sweet. You're coming to Dad's birthday dinner tonight, right? Ethan said you might be working late. I gripped the letter tighter, my wedding ring catching the afternoon light. No, I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. Great. I have some exciting news to share with everyone. Of course she did. Mia always had exciting news at family gatherings. It was her way of making sure all eyes were on her. Can't wait to hear it, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, have you talked to Dad recently about business stuff? There was the slightest pause. Not really. You know how Dad is, all work and no play. Why? Just curious. See you tonight. I hung up before she could ask more questions. My husband Ethan's name in her message bothered me. They'd been talking about my work schedule. Jamie, my best friend since college, called while I was still sitting in Dad's study. You okay? She asked. You sound off. I found something concerning. Can you meet for coffee tomorrow? I need your perspective on this. Of course. Is it about the business launch? I looked down at the letter again. Sort of. It's about Mia. And possibly Ethan. Oh boy, Jamie sighed. What's your sister done now? I'm not sure yet. But I need to get through Dad's birthday dinner first. Everyone will be there, acting like one big happy family. Want me to create an emergency and call you out of it? I almost said yes, but running away wouldn't solve anything. No, I need to see how they act. Especially Mia and Ethan. Something's not right. After hanging up, I carefully refolded the letter and slipped it into my purse. Through the window, I could see cars starting to arrive. Mia's red sports car pulled up first, always early when she had exciting news to share. I watched her step out, all designer clothes and perfect hair, air-kissing Mom in the garden. She was already commanding attention, gesturing animatedly about something while Mom nodded along, completely enchanted. Just like always, Ethan's car pulled in next. He got out and immediately went to hug Mia, their greeting looking a little too familiar for my comfort. They shared a quick look before separating, the kind of look that made my stomach turn. I stood up, straightening my clothes and taking a deep breath. Time to go downstairs and play my part in this family charade. But this time I'd be watching. Really watching. Because now I knew, the sister who'd always claimed to be my biggest supporter was actually plotting my downfall. And somehow my husband was involved. The question was, how far would they go? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? Dad's birthday dinner was a masterclass in fake smiles and hidden daggers. I kept the letter burning a hole in my purse while Mia commanded center stage, announcing her exciting news. She was starting her own event planning business. And guess who's already signed up as my first major client? Mia beamed, reaching for her wine glass. The Hendersons. You know, the family who owns that gorgeous estate where Avery's doing the landscaping. My fork clattered against my plate. The Hendersons were my biggest potential clients, the ones who could make or break my new business. I hadn't even finished presenting my final design proposal to them yet. That's wonderful, I managed, feeling Ethan's hand squeeze my knee under the table. Was it meant to be reassuring or warning? Oh honey, Mom gushed. 2 successful daughters in complementary businesses. You girls could work together. Mia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Actually, I already suggested that to the Hendersons. They're thinking of going in a different direction with their landscaping. Something more modern. Dad looked up from his plate. Avery's designs are plenty modern. Of course they are, Mia backpedaled smoothly. I just meant they're considering all their options. You understand, right, sis? It's just business. Just business. Like the letter in my purse was just paper. Speaking of business, I said, watching her carefully, I was organizing Dad's study earlier and found some interesting correspondence. Mia's smile flickered for just a second. Oh, anything about me? Actually, I started, but Ethan suddenly stood up, drawing everyone's attention. Before we get into business talk, I'd like to propose a toast to George, he announced, raising his glass. To the man who welcomed me into this amazing family. I watched Mia during his speech. She was staring at her plate, her fingers nervously shredding her napkin. When she looked up, our eyes met, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected: fear. After dinner, I cornered her in the kitchen while she was helping with dishes by reorganizing Mom's wine glasses. The Hendersons were my clients first, I said quietly. Were they? I don't see any contracts. She arranged the glasses with precise movements. Maybe if you spent less time organizing Dad's study and more time closing deals. I found your letter, Mia. The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly. What letter? The one where you told Dad how you're planning to destroy my business. Want me to read it to everyone? She set the glass down carefully. You always do this, Avery. Turn everything into some kind of competition. I'm finally doing something successful with my life, and you can't stand it. That's not. Mom, Mia called out, her voice cracking. Avery's threatening me because I got a client she wanted. Mom rushed in, finding Mia with tears in her eyes. Perfect, glistening tears that hadn't smudged her mascara. Avery Thompson, Mom scolded. I raised you better than this. Your sister is trying to build something of her own. Why can't you support her? But she... I stopped, realizing how it would sound. I'm the responsible one, the steady one. Mia's the free spirit everyone needs to protect and encourage. Nothing had changed since we were kids. I think you should apologize to your sister, Mom said firmly. Over Mom's shoulder, Mia's tears vanished, replaced by a small, triumphant smile. You're right, I said, my voice steady. I'm sorry, Mia. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions about that letter. Mia's smile faltered. What letter? The one I'll be showing Dad tomorrow. Sleep well, sis. I left them in the kitchen, passing Ethan in the hallway. He reached for my arm, but I pulled away. We need to talk, he said quietly. Yes, we do. I met his eyes. About why you've been discussing my work schedule with my sister. He opened his mouth to respond, but Dad called him into the living room. As he walked away, I saw him pull out his phone and type something quickly. In my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. I started the engine, my hands steady on the wheel. Tomorrow I'd meet Jamie for coffee and figure out exactly how deep this betrayal went. But tonight I had some research to do about the Hendersons, and about my husband's recent phone records. Jamie set her coffee cup down with enough force to make the table rattle. You're not going to believe what I found about your sister. We were sitting in our usual corner of the bean house, away from the morning rush. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night digging through Ethan's phone records while he slept soundly beside me, completely unaware. Hit me, I said, bracing myself. Mia's broke. Like seriously broke. She's got credit card debt in the six figures, and there's a collection agency after her for an unpaid business loan from last year. My stomach dropped. What business loan? For her fashion consulting venture that lasted all of 3 months. Jamie pulled out her tablet, showing me the documents. But here's the kicker, guess who co-signed that loan? Please don't say. Ethan. Your husband co-signed a $100,000 loan for your sister 6 months ago. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. 6 months ago, when Ethan had insisted we delay buying the commercial property I wanted for my landscape design business, claiming the market wasn't right. My phone buzzed, Mrs. Henderson's name flashing on the screen. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Avery, dear, she said, her tone apologetic. I wanted to speak with you directly about the garden redesign. Of course. I'm finalizing the proposals now. That's just it. Your sister showed us some remarkable concepts yesterday. She suggested integrating the garden design with her event planning services, offering us a complete package deal. My free hand clenched around my coffee cup. Mrs. Henderson, I should mention that Mia has no experience in landscape architecture. Oh, she mentioned that. But she's bringing in someone from Carson and Reed Landscaping as her partner. They're very well established. Carson and Reed, my former employers. The same company where Ethan still consulted part-time. After the call ended, Jamie reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Avery, breathe. They're working together, I said, the pieces finally clicking. Ethan's been feeding Mia information about my clients, my designs, everything. That's why he insisted on handling all our business contacts. There's more, Jamie said quietly. I found some interesting deposits in Mia's bank records. Regular payments from a shell company. Guess who owns it? Before she could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Ethan. Where are you? We need to talk about the Henderson project. Another message followed immediately, this one from Mia. Got a minute? I have a business proposition for you. They're panicking, Jamie observed. You've got them worried. I stood up, gathering my things. I need to go to the office. The Henderson designs are on my work computer, and I need to secure them before your husband can access them? Jamie finished. I'll drive. You're shaking too much. We arrived at my small office suite 15 minutes later, but something was wrong. The door was already unlocked. Inside, Mia sat at my desk, her perfectly manicured fingers flying over my keyboard. She looked up, startled, but quickly recovered with a practiced smile. Oh good, you're here. I was just leaving you a note. She stood smoothly, but I saw her slip a USB drive into her pocket. Step away from my computer, Mia. Don't be dramatic. I'm trying to help you. She moved toward the door, but Jamie blocked her path. The Hendersons were never going to choose your designs anyway. Safe. Like you. Is that what you tell yourself to justify stealing from me? Stealing. She laughed, but there was an edge to it. I'm surviving. Something you've never had to worry about. Perfect Avery with her perfect plans. And the $100,000 Ethan helped you borrow? Was that survival too? Her face paled slightly. He told you. No, he didn't. Just like he didn't tell me he's been helping you poach my clients. Tell me, Mia, What do you have on my husband? She reached for the door handle but turned back with a smile that chilled me. Why don't you ask him about last year's company retreat? I'm sure he'd love to explain everything. After she left, Jamie and I discovered she'd already emailed herself copies of all my design files. But as I stared at the computer screen, I realized something worse. She'd accessed my client list, my vendor contracts, everything. What now? Jamie asked. I opened my phone and dialed my father's number. Now we find out what really happened at that company retreat. Dad met me at his favorite diner, the one where he'd taught me and Mia to count change using the sugar packets. It felt different now, sitting across from him with a manila folder full of bank statements and phone records between us. The company retreat, he said, stirring his coffee. I remember because Ethan came back early. Said there was some kind of emergency. Did Mia happen to be there? His hand stilled on the spoon. She wasn't supposed to be. It was employees only. But I heard from Bill Carson that she showed up uninvited. Created quite a scene at the hotel bar. He looked up at me. You think something happened between them? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Jamie. Found security footage from your office. You need to see this now. I have to go, I told Dad, gathering my things. But first, did you know about the loan? The one Ethan co-signed for Mia. Dad's face darkened. He did what? That's what I thought. I stood up then paused. Dad? When you found Mia's letter about ruining my business, why didn't you tell me? What letter? The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright. The letter in your study. The one where she outlined her whole plan. Avery, I never saw any letter. My hand started shaking. But it was in your desk drawer. I found it while cleaning. The drawer that's always locked? He shook his head. The one only Ethan has access to because he handles the company's old files? The world tilted sideways. I barely made it to Jamie's office, where she was waiting with her laptop. Watch this, she said, pulling up the security footage from my office building. Look at the timestamp. 3 days before Mia showed up at your computer. The grainy video showed Ethan entering my office late at night, using his key. He spent 20 minutes at my computer before leaving with what looked like a stack of files. There's more, Jamie said quietly. Remember that shell company making payments to Mia? It's registered to a property in the Cayman Islands. Guess who flew there last month? Ethan had a business trip. With Mia. I found their flight records. She hesitated. And hotel reservation. Single room. My wedding ring felt like it was burning my finger. The company retreat last year. That's when it started, wasn't it? Probably. But Avery, we need to talk about the money. Those payments to Mia? They're coming from your business account. My phone buzzed. Ethan again. Where are you? We need to talk about what Mia told you. It's not what you think. Another message followed immediately from Mia. He's freaking out. Maybe we should discuss terms. I turned off my phone. Jamie, I need your help with something. Anything. I need to access Ethan's cloud storage. The one where he keeps all the business documents. She raised an eyebrow. The one he specifically told you never to worry about, because he had everything under control? That's the one. It took Jamie less than an hour to crack it. What we found made me glad I was sitting down. He's been planning this for months, Jamie said, scrolling through documents. Using your designs to secure contracts, then having them transferred to Carson and Reed through Mia's event planning business. The Hendersons aren't the first, they're just the biggest score yet. I stared at the screen, at the careful paper trail of my husband systematically dismantling everything I'd built. All this time, I thought Mia was the mastermind. She's definitely involved, but Ethan. Jamie trailed off, opening another file. Oh God. What? Look at the date on this incorporation document for the shell company. It's from 2 weeks before your wedding. My phone started buzzing again, Mom this time. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what she'd say. How I needed to work things out with my sister, how family was everything, how I was being too suspicious. Jamie, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need you to help me with one more thing. What are you thinking? I pulled out my own USB drive. I'm thinking it's time to show my sister exactly what it feels like when someone takes everything you've worked for. The plan forming in my mind wasn't pretty, But then again, neither was betrayal. I didn't expect Mia to show up at my house at midnight. Mascara streaked down her face and hands trembling as she clutched her designer purse. Ethan was staying at a hotel, my choice, not his, so I was alone when I opened the door. "I can explain everything," she said. "Like the Cayman Islands trip with my husband?" I stepped aside to let her in, noting how she scanned the room, probably looking for Ethan. It's complicated. She sank onto the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Ethan said he'd help me with my debts if I helped him with some business deals. I didn't know at first that he was planning to steal my clients? Or just my designs? Both." She wiped her eyes, smearing expensive makeup across her cheek. "But Avery, he's got something on me. From the company retreat. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." My phone buzzed. Jamie sending me updates about the financial records we'd found. I ignored it, watching my sister's performance. "'Cause that's what this was, wasn't it? Another act in the Mia show? What happened at the retreat, Mia?" She shook her head. "I can't. He'll release the video if I tell anyone." "What video?" Before she could answer, both our phones chimed simultaneously. A text from Ethan. "Meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. Carson and Reed offices. All parties present or the deals go public." Mia's face went pale. "You can't go. You don't understand what he's capable of." "I think I do. The shell company, the stolen designs, the embezzled money, all of it started before my wedding. He played us both, didn't he?" She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "The letter I found? The one outlining your plan to ruin my business? Ethan planted it. He needed me to suspect you first, to keep me from looking too closely at what he was doing." "Oh God," she whispered. "The hotel video doesn't exist, does it?" Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these looked real. "He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell everyone about the money I embezzled from Carson and Reed last year. But I never took that money. I just found out he set it up to look like I did." My phone buzzed again. Jamie had found something else. I checked the message and felt my breath catch. "Mia," I said carefully, "when exactly did Ethan tell you he'd release the video?" "Right after the retreat." "Why?" I showed her my phone. Screenshots Jamie had recovered from Ethan's cloud storage. Documents showing he'd been siphoning money from Carson and Reed for years, carefully structuring it to look like multiple employees were responsible, including Mia. "He's been setting this up since before he met me," I said, "using both of us against each other while he stripped everything bare." Mia's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "The Henderson's contract. He made me think I was helping him save your business, that you were the one stealing designs. I'm so stupid." We both were. I took the phone back, scrolling through more documents. "But tomorrow at 9 we have a chance to fix that." "How?" "He's got everything documented to frame us both." I smiled, thinking about the USB drive Jamie and I had prepared. "Not everything. Remember when we were kids, and you used to create elaborate stories to get us out of trouble?" "You mean when I'd confessed to something bigger to distract Mom and Dad from what we actually did?" A spark of the old Mia showed through her tears. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time for the Thompson sisters to give one hell of a performance." I pulled out my laptop. "But first, we need to talk about exactly what happened at that company retreat, and why Ethan really came home early." Mia's smile turned sharp, matching mine. "Where should I start?" "Start with the real reason you showed up at the hotel bar that night." "And Mia?" I met her eyes. This time, no lies between us. She nodded, straightening her shoulders. "It all started when I overheard Ethan on the phone, talking about a merger that would put you out of business." The Carson and Reed conference room felt like a trap the moment I walked in. Ethan sat at the head of the table, looking perfectly composed in his expensive suit. Bill Carson stood by the window, frowning at documents spread across his desk. Mia was already there, wearing the same clothes from last night, her usual polish cracking around the edges. "Glad you could join us," Ethan said, sliding a folder toward me. "These are the new terms." I didn't touch it. "Terms for what?" "Your graceful exit from the industry." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Unless you prefer we discuss your sister's creative accounting, or your own theft of proprietary designs." My designs, I corrected. Not according to these documents. He tapped the folder. Signed and dated before you ever started your business. Everything you've created belongs to Carson and Reed. Bill Carson cleared his throat. Ethan has shown me conclusive evidence that he's been stealing from your company for years. I pulled out my USB drive. Or that he's been setting up elaborate schemes to frame others for it. Ethan's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened around his pen. Careful, Avery. Remember what's at stake. You mean like the video from the company retreat? Mia's voice shook slightly. The one that doesn't exist? Are you sure about that? Ethan reached for his phone. Should we play it for everyone? Go ahead, I said. Show us all how you set my sister up that night. How you plan to use her as your scapegoat while you strip the company bare. His finger hovered over the phone. Bill, I think we should call security. Actually, Jamie's voice came from the doorway. I think we should wait for the police. They're very interested in those offshore accounts you've been using. Ethan stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. This is ridiculous. Bill, these women are trying to. To what? I opened my laptop, turning it to face the room. Show how you've been embezzling money since before you met me? Or how you manufactured evidence to frame Mia when she caught on to your scheme. It's all lies, he snarled, but his composure was cracking. You have no proof. Actually, Bill Carson said quietly, we do. He pulled out another set of documents, ones I recognized from Jamie's late-night digging. The board has been investigating discrepancies for months. We just needed to know who to watch. Ethan's face went blank. He looked at each of us, me, Mia, Jamie, Bill Carson, then suddenly lunged for my laptop. If I'm going down, he growled, I'm taking everyone with me. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Mia screaming as Ethan grabbed the laptop. Jamie rushing forward. The sound of breaking glass as the laptop went through the 10th floor window. Ethan's triumphant laugh. Good luck proving anything now, he said. I felt oddly calm as I pulled out my phone. You mean like these copies Jamie sent to every board member an hour ago? Or the ones Dad's lawyer is reviewing right now? His face contorted. You're bluffing. Like you bluffed about having video of Mia? Or about owning my designs? I stood up, fighting to keep my voice steady. The thing about growing up with a sister who lies constantly. You learn to keep receipts. You stupid bitch, he spat. And suddenly he was coming toward me, hands outstretched. Several things happened at once. Security burst through the door. Mia stepped between us, her designer purse swinging like a weapon. Jamie shouted something about cameras rolling. And I stood there, watching my husband being wrestled to the ground, realizing that my entire marriage had been a carefully orchestrated lie. Avery. Mia touched my arm gently. Are you okay? I wasn't. Nothing about this was okay. My business was in shambles, my marriage was a fraud, and my family's reputation was about to become tabloid fodder. But as I watched Ethan being led away in handcuffs, still shouting threats, I felt something unexpected: relief. No, I said honestly. I'm not okay. But I will be. Mia squeezed my hand, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were really sisters again. The Hendersons called, Jamie said softly. They want to meet with you tomorrow. Just you. I nodded, watching Bill Carson gather evidence for the police. My world had imploded, but somehow, standing in the wreckage, I felt stronger than ever. Now I just had to figure out how to rebuild from the ashes. The police interview room felt colder than it should in August. Ethan sat across from me, still wearing his expensive suit, though now it looked rumpled after a night in holding. This wasn't how I'd imagined spending my first day as a divorced woman. 5 minutes, the detective said, closing the door behind him. Ethan leaned forward, his charm switched on like a light. Avery, we can still fix this. The board doesn't have to press charges. We could start over. I placed a folder on the table. Like you started over with those other companies before Carson and Reed? His smile faltered. What are you talking about? Jamie's good at digging, Ethan. Really good. 3 companies in 5 years, each one with mysterious financial troubles right after you left. Each time someone else took the fall. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. Your old victims are very interested in testifying. I slid the folder toward him, But that's not why I'm here. He opened the folder, his face darkening as he read. Where did you get these? From Mia's hotel room at the company retreat. The real reason she was there that night, she was gathering evidence. She saw what you were doing months before I did. She was trying to blackmail me, he snapped. No, she was trying to protect me. But you turned it around, made her think you had something on her. Classic Ethan Collins playbook, right? Always have leverage. His handcuffs clinked against the table as he pushed the folder away. What do you want? I want to understand something. Was any of it real? Our marriage, our plans, any of it? For a moment his mask slipped, showing something almost like regret. The garden designs were brilliant. I didn't lie about that. Just about everything else. Business is business, Avery. Nothing personal. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. That's where you're wrong. It was always personal. That's why you'll never understand why you failed. Failed? He laughed harshly. I had everything perfect until your sister grew a conscience. No, you had everything perfect until you underestimated what sisters are capable of. I reached for the door. By the way, the Hendersons loved my new designs. The ones you never saw, because I kept them at Jamie's house. You're making a mistake, he called as I opened the door. I still have friends who can. Who can what? End up in here with you. Mia's voice came from the hallway. She stepped into view, holding up her phone. Everything you just said is recorded, by the way. Want to threaten us again? Ethan's face contorted with rage. You little. That's enough, the detective interrupted, moving between us. As we walked away, Mia grabbed my hand. Are you okay? Getting there. I squeezed her hand back. Thank you for trying to warn me, even when I didn't want to listen. Thank you for believing me when it mattered. She stopped, turning to face me. Avery, about everything else, the competition, the jealousy, making mom and dad always take my side. We don't have to do this now. Yes, we do. Her eyes filled with tears. I was so busy being jealous of your success that I almost let him destroy you. I need you to know. I know, I said softly. And we'll figure it out. One day at a time. Outside the police station, Jamie was waiting with coffee and a stack of new client contracts. Ready to get back to work? I looked at the contracts, then at my sister. Actually, I was thinking about a partnership. Someone to handle the event planning side of the business, work with clients directly. Mia's eyes widened. Are you serious? On one condition, no more lies. About anything. She nodded solemnly, then broke into a real smile. Not her usual practice charm, but something genuine. Deal. As we walked to the car, I felt lighter than I had in months. Ethan had tried to tear us apart, but instead he'd given us something we'd lost years ago. The chance to be sisters again. So, Jamie said, scrolling through her phone, who wants to help me delete Ethan from all the wedding photos? Mia and I looked at each other and started laughing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about moving forward, stronger than before. 6 months after Ethan's conviction, I stood in the Hendersons' completed garden, watching guests marvel at the integration of landscape and event space. Mia fluttered between groups, handling the grand opening with her usual charm, but something was different now. Her smile reached her eyes. It's beautiful, Mom said, appearing beside me. Both the garden and your sister's work. I nodded, noting how the evening light caught the water features we'd designed together. She's good at what she does. Always was. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. Mom touched my arm. With Ethan, with everything. I was so busy trying to protect Mia that I missed who really needed protection. We all missed it, Mom. That was his specialty. Across the garden, Jamie was showing Dad something on her tablet. Probably the latest financials. Our business had grown faster than expected, partly thanks to the publicity from Ethan's trial, partly because Mia and I made a surprisingly good team. Mrs. Collins? A server approached with a letter. This was left for you at the entrance. It's Thompson now. I corrected automatically, taking the envelope. I recognized Ethan's handwriting immediately. Want me to throw it away? Mia asked, materializing at my side. I considered it, then shook my head. No. I need to know. The letter was short. I underestimated you both. The garden in the prison yard is dead, but I think about your designs every day. Some things are beautiful even when they're dangerous. Trying to get the last word. Mia scoffed, reading over my shoulder. Classic Ethan. It doesn't matter anymore. I folded the letter and handed it to Jamie, who joined us. Add it to the file? She tucked it away with a nod. We kept everything now, every document, every message. Not out of fear or revenge, but because we'd learned the hard way that truth needs protection. Speaking of files, Mia said hesitantly, there's something I need to show you. She led me to a quiet corner of the garden, pulling out her phone. Remember how we couldn't figure out where Ethan got his initial capital? Jamie found this yesterday. The document on her screen showed a familiar name, our grandmother's trust fund, which had mysteriously dried up years ago. The fund I'd been too busy to investigate when Mia was named sole beneficiary. He helped me steal it, Mia whispered, before he even met you. I didn't understand what he was doing then, but it was always your money too. I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of years of resentment and competition shifting into something else. Keep it, I said finally. Avery, no. We need to make this right. We are making it right. I gestured at the garden around us. Every project, every client, every time we choose honesty over easy answers. That's how we make it right. She hugged me suddenly, fiercely. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time you got so honest. Later, as the party wound down, I found myself back in the center of the garden. The night-blooming flowers were opening, their fragrance mixing with the sound of falling water. Ready to go? Jamie asked, car keys in hand. Almost. I looked around at what we'd built, not just the garden but everything else. The business, the rebuilt relationships, the trust that grew back slowly, like plants after a hard winter. You know, Mia said, joining us, we got another offer today. That big resort on the coast. I saw the email. And I smiled, remembering the letter in Dad's study that had started everything. How easily suspicion had bloomed, how quickly trust had withered. And I think we should look at it together. All of us. Jamie raised her eyebrows. Even after everything? Especially after everything. I touched one of the night-blooming flowers, watching it unfold. Some things grow better in the dark, but they still need light to survive. We walked out together, leaving the garden to its evening transformation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new chances to choose trust over fear. But tonight, in this garden we'd built from the ashes of betrayal, everything was blooming exactly as it should.
The cursor blinked accusingly on my screen, each flash like a tiny dagger to my heart. 3 times I read the email, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. I'm Ashlyn, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I had my life figured out. The attached photos made a mockery of that belief. My husband Dylan, the man who'd kissed me goodbye this morning, was wrapped around a woman who definitely wasn't me. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, when he'd claimed to be at a business conference in Seattle. Mom? Are you okay? Sophie's voice pierced through my spiral. She stood in my home office doorway, her 13-year-old face scrunched with concern. I slammed my laptop shut. Just work stuff, honey. Everything's fine. You look like you're going to throw up. Thanks for that assessment. I forced a smile. Don't you have homework? Already done. Dad texted. He's working late again. Of course he was. My fingers curled into fists beneath my desk. Right. How about pizza for dinner? You hate ordering pizza on weeknights. Maybe I'm feeling rebellious. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Sophie lingered, and I could feel her studying me with those 2 perceptive eyes she inherited from her father. Really, sweetheart? I'm fine. After she left, I reopened the laptop. The anonymous email waited. Thought you should know what your husband's really been doing. A friend. Below that, 5 photos, each more damning than the last. The woman was younger, blonde, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. My phone buzzed. Dylan's message popped up, big project. Don't wait up. Love you. I wanted to vomit. Instead, I opened our banking app. There it was, a charge from the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, carefully labeled as conference registration fee. My IT background kicked in. Within minutes, I had access to his email, calendar, credit card statements. The truth unfolded like a map of betrayal, each discovery a new pin in my heart. Ashlyn? My mother's voice came through my headset. I must have dialed her without realizing. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. Just checking in. Don't lie to your mother. I can hear it in your voice. I swallowed hard. Mom, I need to handle something. But I might need your help with Sophie soon. Whatever you need, sweetheart. She paused. Is it Dylan? How did you? Mothers know these things. And I never trusted that smile of his. Too perfect. A laugh escaped me, sharp and hollow. I have to go. Sophie needs dinner. Call me tomorrow. Promise me. I promise. After hanging up, I stared at the evidence spread across my screen. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never once checked his accounts. Never questioned his late nights or business trips. Trust, I'd called it. Stupidity, looking back. My cursor hovered over the forward button. One click and I could send everything to his boss, his family, our friends. But Sophie's face flashed in my mind, and I forced myself to think. Dylan had always underestimated me, treated my tech skills as cute hobby rather than a career. He probably thought I'd never find out, or if I did, I'd be too scared to act. He was wrong on both counts. I closed the email without forwarding it. Instead, I opened a new document and began typing, methodically listing every account, every transaction, every lie I'd uncovered. By the time Sophie called up that the pizza had arrived, I had the beginnings of a plan. Dylan wanted to play games? Fine. But he'd forgotten something crucial. In chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. And I'd just made my opening move. Dylan came home late that night, smelling of expensive cologne and whiskey. I watched him stumble through his nightly routine from behind my laptop screen. My fingers never pausing as I documented another string of suspicious transactions. Still working? He loosened his tie, flashing that perfect smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made my stomach turn. The farm tech project again? Someone has to pay attention to our future. The words came out sharper than I intended. His smile flickered. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I forced myself to look back at my screen. Just tired. You know, if you're worried about money, I could always. I'm not worried about money. I was worried about the $20,000 he'd withdrawn last month. Labeled as business investment. I was worried about the credit card charges at jewelry stores that had never resulted in gifts for me. I was worried about how easily lies slipped from his lips. Sophie appeared in the doorway, already in her pajamas. Dad, you missed pizza night. Sorry, princess. Big client dinner. He moved to hug her, but she stepped back. Whatever. Mom, can you help me with my coding project tomorrow? Of course, honey. Dylan's face darkened. Since when are you into coding? Since forever, Sophie shot back. You'd know that if you were ever home. Sophie, I warned, even as pride swelled in my chest. My daughter, so fierce, so perceptive. No, she's right. Dylan ran a hand through his hair. I've been working too much. How about this weekend we all go somewhere? The lake house maybe? The lake house where he'd taken his blonde mistress 3 weeks ago, according to his credit card statement. Can't, I said. I have a presentation Monday. Reschedule it. Like you reschedule your meetings? The words escaped before I could stop them. His eyes narrowed. What's going on with you lately? Nothing's going on with me. I closed my laptop with deliberate care. Sophie, bed. Now. After she left, Dylan moved closer, perching on the edge of my desk. Talk to me, Ash. You've been different all week. I looked up at him, studying the face I'd loved for 15 years. The slight crow's feet around his eyes, the dimple in his left cheek, the perfectly maintained stubble. I searched for any sign of guilt, any crack in his facade. There was nothing. Different how? I asked. Distant. Cold. He reached for my hand. I let him take it, fighting the urge to pull away. If something's bothering you, would you tell me? I interrupted. If something was bothering you? He blinked. Of course. Promise? I promise. He squeezed my hand. No secrets between us, right? I smiled, and for the first time in our marriage, I understood how easy it was to lie to someone you loved. Right. No secrets. Later, after he'd fallen asleep, I slipped down to Sophie's room. She was still awake, the blue light of her tablet illuminating her face. Mom? She sat up. Are you okay? I sat on the edge of her bed. Why wouldn't I be? Because. She hesitated, then turned her tablet toward me. On the screen was an email draft, addressed to an anonymous account. I found something. About Dad. My blood ran cold. What did you find? His passwords weren't even hard to crack. Her voice trembled. He's been. There's this woman. Stop. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her tears soak through my shirt. Listen to me. Whatever you found, whatever you were going to do, let me handle it. But. Promise me, Sophie. This isn't your burden to carry. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. What are you going to do? I thought about the evidence mounting on my laptop, about Dylan's easy lies over dinner. About the daughter who was too smart to be fooled by either of us. I'm going to protect us, I said. Both of us. But I need time to do it right. She nodded, her expression eerily similar to the one I'd seen in the mirror lately. I can help. I know you can. I kissed her forehead. But for now, just act normal. Can you do that? I learned from the best, she said, and I wasn't sure whether to be proud or heartbroken that my daughter had become such a good actor. The notification popped up on my screen at 3 a.m. Sophie had accessed Dylan's company email. Again. My daughter, the amateur hacker, was getting sloppy with her digital footprints. I reached for my phone to text her, then froze as another alert flashed. File transfer in progress. Multiple documents. Financial records. Damn it, Sophie, I muttered, throwing off my covers. But before I could reach her room, she burst into mine, tablet clutched to her chest. Mom, she whispered, face pale in the darkness. You need to see this. The spreadsheets told a story that made my blood run cold. Regular transfers from the company's agricultural development fund, my project's funding source, to offshore accounts. Falsified reports. Doctored numbers. All traced back to Dylan's executive access codes. He's stealing from your project, Sophie said. That's why he never wanted you to succeed with it. My hands shook as I scrolled through the documents. How did you even find these? He used the same password pattern for everything. Amateur stuff. She perched on my bed, watching me process the information. There's more. About Claire. I looked up sharply. What about her? She works for one of the competing firms. The ones bidding against your project. Sophie pulled up another email thread. But I don't think she knows about the money. Look at their messages, she thinks he's leaving you for her. That they're going to start fresh together. A hollow laugh escaped me. Fresh. With stolen money. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, headlights swept across my bedroom wall. Dylan's car, pulling into the driveway at 3:30 a.m. Delete your traces, I hissed. Now. Go to bed. Sophie's fingers flew across her tablet as she hurried out. I slipped back under the covers, heart pounding, mind racing through possibilities. Minutes later, Dylan stumbled in, reeking of perfume and scotch. "You're awake?" He squinted at me. "Couldn't sleep. Work stress." I watched him undress, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "The project deadline's coming up." He paused, one shoe in hand. "About that. The board's considering pulling funding. Budget cuts." "Really?" My voice stayed steady, even as rage burned through my veins. "That's not what the quarterly reports showed. Things change fast in business, Ash. You know that." He slid into bed, reaching for me. "Maybe it's for the best. You could focus on something else." I let him pull me close, fighting the urge to recoil. "Like what?" "I don't know. Something less demanding. More family-oriented." "Family-oriented? Like embezzlement and adultery?" I wanted to scream the words, to throw his lies back in his face. Instead, I said, "I'll think about it." The next morning, I waited until Dylan left for work before calling the number I'd found in his emails. "Hello?" A woman's voice, younger than I expected. "Claire Mitchell?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "Someone who thinks you should know the truth about Dylan Parker." My voice remained calm, professional. "And about the money he's been stealing from Morton Agricultural Technologies." Silence stretched across the line. "Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Check your email in 5 minutes. And Claire? I'd think carefully about your next move. Your firm wouldn't want to be implicated in corporate espionage." I hung up and sent the files, carefully edited to protect Sophie's involvement. Then I called my mother. "I need you to take Sophie for a few days," I said when she answered. "It's happening, then?" "Yes." I watched Sophie through the window as she waited for her school bus. "Things are about to get messy. Be careful, Ashlyn. Men like Dylan don't take well to losing control." "I know." I touched my screen where Sophie's face had been moments before. "That's why I need to end this quickly. Before he realizes what's coming." "And Sophie? She's stronger than we think. Smarter too." Pride mixed with worry in my chest. "She'll understand eventually." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began composing 2 emails. One to Morton's board of directors, outlining specific concerns about financial discrepancies. Another to Dylan's mistress, offering to meet and compare notes. The endgame was starting. I just hoped I could protect the ones I loved while burning everything else to the ground. The coffee shop buzzed with morning chatter, but Ben's silence spoke volumes as he studied the evidence spread across my tablet. 20 years of friendship meant he could read between the lines of what I wasn't saying. "Jesus, Ash." He pushed the tablet back, running a hand through his graying hair. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. I wrapped my hands around my untouched latte. "Long enough to know it's not just about the affair anymore. The embezzlement makes it criminal." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You need to go to the police." "And then what?" "Watch Sophie's college fund disappear into legal fees." I shook my head. "There has to be another way." "Like blackmail?" His eyes narrowed. "That's not you, Ashlyn." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Claire, "Meeting you was a mistake." He explained everything. "Stay away from us." Ben read the message over my shoulder. "What did you do?" "Gave her enough rope." I showed him the screenshot I'd sent Claire, Dylan at dinner with another woman, neither of them Claire nor me. "Turns out our friend's been playing everyone." "Christ." Ben's expression darkened. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" The accusation stung because it was true. "Maybe I am." "Does that make me terrible?" "It makes you human." He hesitated. "But Sophie." My phone buzzed again. Dylan's name flashed on the screen. We need to talk. Now. Come to the office. He knows something's wrong, I said, gathering my things. Claire must have warned him. Ben caught my arm. Don't go alone. I have to. If I bring anyone else, he'll know I'm building a case. I forced a smile. Besides, we're in his corporate office. What's the worst he could do? That's what scares me. Ben stood. Call me when you're done. Promise? Promise. The elevator ride to Dylan's floor felt endless. Through the glass walls, I watched Seattle's skyline blur behind rain clouds. The same view I'd admired when he first brought me here, proud to show off his success. Now every gleaming surface felt like a lie. His secretary's desk was empty. The whole floor seemed deserted, despite it being mid-morning. Dylan waited in his office, standing behind his desk like a king on his throne. Shut the door, he said. I did, noting how his hands trembled slightly as he poured himself a drink. It's 10 a.m., Dylan. Interesting time to meet your ex-boyfriend for coffee, too. Ben's been my friend since before I met you. Right. He took a long sip. Just like Claire's just a colleague? The trap was obvious, but I stepped into it anyway. Is that what she is? She called me. Very upset. Seemed to think I was living some kind of double life. His laugh held no humor. Wonder where she got that idea? Maybe from the same place I got these. I pulled up the financial records on my phone, watching his face. The agricultural fund, Dylan? Really? Color drained from his face. How did you? Does it matter? I moved closer, voice steady, despite my racing heart. What matters is what happens next. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you a choice. The words tasted like ash. Either you come clean to the board about the embezzlement and give me full custody of Sophie, or I take everything to the police. Your career, your reputation, all of it. He set down his glass with exaggerated care. You really think you can prove any of this? I think your girlfriend might help, once she sees the photos of you with her best friend. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. You vindictive bitch. Let go. I didn't pull away, didn't show fear. You're on camera, remember? No. His smile turned cruel. I'm not. Maintenance day. Systems are down until noon. Funny timing, isn't it? Understanding hit like ice water. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a trap. Ben knows I'm here, I said quickly. Ben knows you're meeting your lying, cheating husband to talk about divorce. Dylan's grip tightened. Who's going to question if things get emotional? I heard the office door click shut behind me. Heels on hardwood. A familiar perfume. Hello, Ashlyn, Claire said. We need to talk about those emails you sent. The bruises on my wrist had faded to a sickly yellow, but I kept my sleeve pulled down during the video call with Sophie. Her face filled my laptop screen, worry lines too deep for a 13-year-old creasing her forehead. Dad keeps calling Grandma's house, she said. He sounds different. Scary different. Don't answer if he calls again. I glanced at my phone, where Ben's latest text glowed, police report filed. Restraining order in process. Just focus on your coding project. Mom. Sophie leaned closer to her camera. What happened in his office? Ben won't tell me anything. Nothing I couldn't handle. The lie tasted bitter, but necessary. I wouldn't tell her how Claire had recorded our confrontation, trying to bait me into admitting to blackmail. How Dylan's grip had left marks that proved useless without security footage. How I'd barely made it to the elevator before my hands started shaking. A notification popped up on my screen, an email from Morton Technologies' board of directors. My heart stopped. I have to go, honey. Love you. Mom, wait. I ended the call and opened the email. The board wanted an emergency meeting. Tomorrow. About financial irregularities in the agricultural fund. My phone rang, Dylan's number. I declined it, but a text followed immediately. You really think they'll believe you over me? I built that company. Another text, Claire's already told them you tried to extort us. Check your email. The second email contained a video clip. My voice, edited and stripped of context, give me full custody. Or I take everything. Your career, your reputation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, mind racing. Dylan thought he had me cornered, but he'd forgotten something crucial. Something about Sophie's coding project. I dialed Ben. Tell me you didn't do anything stupid, he answered. Define stupid. I pulled up the command prompt on my laptop. Remember that backdoor Sophie found in the company's security system? Ashlyn, no. They're going to bury the embezzlement evidence. Frame me for extortion. Then we fight it legally. You can't. They have Sophie's college fund. Our savings. Everything. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm not letting him take anything else from us. At least wait until. A third email arrived, from Claire's personal account. The subject line made my blood run cold. Sophie's father? Attached was a DNA test from 13 years ago. One Dylan had apparently kept all this time. I have to go, I told Ben, and hung up despite his protests. The test results blurred through my tears. All those years of Dylan's subtle comments about Sophie's intelligence, her tech skills, her personality, so different from his. I'd defended our daughter, never suspecting he'd known all along she wasn't his. My phone buzzed again. Dylan, let's talk about Sophie's real father. Better yet, let's tell her. The rage that filled me was cold, clarifying. I opened Sophie's project folder, the one she'd been using to practice her coding. Inside was a program she'd written, designed to track and document system vulnerabilities. A program that had been running, undetected, on Dylan's company laptop for weeks. I typed out my response, check your email. Then I executed Sophie's program, watching as it compiled weeks of data, every fraudulent transaction, every altered record. Every deleted security log. The program hadn't just tracked Dylan's crimes, it had recorded them in real time, creating an unalterable blockchain of evidence. My daughter. My brilliant, protective daughter. I forwarded everything to the board, the SEC, and Dylan's competitors. Then I sent one final email to Claire, attaching photos of Dylan with not one, but 3 other women. Still think I'm the one he's playing? My phone lit up with Dylan's call again. This time, I answered. You really should have paid more attention to Sophie's coding lessons, I said before he could speak. Turns out she inherited her real father's talent for exposing frauds. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, very quietly, Dylan said, You've just started a war. No, I replied, thinking of Sophie, safe at my mother's house. I've just ended one. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Ben's face as he posted my bail. 3 a.m. and my hand still trembled from being fingerprinted. From Sophie's desperate voicemails I couldn't answer while in custody. Fraud, extortion, and corporate espionage. Ben's voice was flat as we walked to his car. Dylan's really outdone himself. He had it all planned. My voice sounded distant, hollow. The board meeting was a trap. They were waiting with security, with lawyers. Everything I sent them, he'd already twisted into evidence against me. We'll fight it. With what? I laughed, the sound bordering on hysteric. He froze our accounts. The house, the cars, everything's in his name. Even Sophie's college fund. Ben's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Sophie's safe at your mother's. For now. My phone buzzed, another text from Claire, he's filing for emergency custody. Says you're unstable, dangerous. I'm sorry. Sorry. Like that word could fix anything. We pulled up to Ben's apartment, and I finally asked the question burning in my throat. Did you know? About what? Sophie. I turned to face him. The DNA test. Did you know she was yours? The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. 5. I suspected, he finally said. The timing. But you were so happy with Dylan. I couldn't. 13 years. My voice cracked. 13 years of watching her grow up calling another man Dad. Of watching him use her as a weapon against me. And you just watched. Ash. Don't. I got out of the car, legs barely holding me up. I need to call Sophie. But when I tried, the call wouldn't connect. Blocked number. I tried my mother's house. Same thing. Another text from Claire, Dylan's at your mother's. He's taking Sophie home. The world tilted sideways. Ben caught my arm as I stumbled. He can't, I whispered. The restraining order only covers you. Ben was already pulling up his phone. And with the charges against you. My phone rang. Dylan. Where are you? His voice was smooth, controlled. Victory wrapped in concern. Sophie's asking for you. Let me talk to her. I don't think that's wise, given your mental state. Breaking into corporate servers? Stealing company data? What were you thinking? I was thinking about protecting our daughter. The words tasted like ash. Our daughter? He laughed softly. We both know that's not true. Don't worry, though. I won't tell her. Not unless you force my hand. What do you want? Simple. Drop everything. Sign a confession, taking full responsibility for the fraud. Give me full custody. In return, I'll make sure you avoid jail time. Maybe even arrange supervised visits, eventually. Ben was watching me, his face a mirror of my own pain. The truth about Sophie hung between us like a physical thing. You have an hour to decide, Dylan continued. After that, I start telling Sophie exactly why her mother can't be trusted. Starting with who her real father is. The line went dead. I slid down Ben's apartment wall, the cold concrete grounding me as my world imploded. Everything I'd done to protect Sophie had only given Dylan more weapons to use against us. We need to call the police, Ben said. And tell them what? That the respected executive is keeping his daughter away from his unstable, criminal wife? My laugh turned into something like a sob. Face it, Ben. He's one. No. Ben crouched in front of me. Look at me, Ash. We're not done. I can't lose her. You won't. He pulled out his phone again. But we need help. Real help. Who? Claire Mitchell, he said, showing me a new text. She wants to meet. Says she has proof Dylan set you up. Proof that could save both you and Sophie. I stared at the message, hope warring with suspicion. It's probably another trap. Probably. Ben helped me up. But right now, it's the only play we have left. I thought of Sophie, scared and confused, trapped in Dylan's web of lies. Of 13 years of secrets about to explode. Make the call, I said. Claire chose the same coffee shop where this had all started. She sat alone, her designer purse on the table like a shield, hands wrapped around an untouched latte. No sign of a trap, but Ben still insisted on watching from his car outside. He's going to destroy you, she said as I sat down. He's already convinced the board you're unstable. Dangerous. Yet here you are. She pushed a USB drive across the table. Everything you need. The real financial records, recordings of him planning the setup, proof the DNA test was fabricated. I stared at her. Fabricated? Sophie is yours and Ben's. Dylan's known for years, but he needed leverage. Insurance. She laughed bitterly. Just like he needed me to play the desperate mistress. To help him frame you. My phone buzzed. Dylan, taking Sophie to the lake house for the weekend. Last chance to take the deal. Why are you helping me now? Because, Claire's voice caught. I'm pregnant. And I've seen what he does to children he claims to love. The coffee shop door chimed. Dylan walked in, Sophie trailing behind him. My heart stopped. Well, Dylan said, sliding into the seat beside Claire. This is cozy. Sophie's eyes were red-rimmed, her shoulders hunched. When she saw me, she started forward, but Dylan's hand shot out, gripping her arm. Dad, she whispered. You're hurting me. Sophie, I kept my voice steady, go wait with Uncle Ben in the car. She's not going anywhere. Dylan's smile was razor-sharp. Claire, the drive? Claire's hand trembled as she reached for the USB, but I was faster. I snatched it and stood, putting distance between us. It's over, Dylan. The real records, the recordings, everything's here. You mean these recordings? He pulled out his phone, played a clip of Claire and me discussing blackmail. Expertly edited from our previous conversations. Or maybe the financial records showing your embezzlement? Stop it, Sophie suddenly said. Just stop lying. Dylan's grip on her arm tightened. Sophie, honey. I sent the original email, she blurted out. About you and Claire. I found everything, the money, the affairs, all of it. And I recorded you. Every conversation, every meeting, every threat. It's all backed up to Mom's secure server. The color drained from Dylan's face. You're lying. Check your laptop. Sophie's voice shook but held firm. The program I wrote for my coding project? It wasn't just tracking your crimes. It was documenting them. Timestamped, authenticated, impossible to fake. Claire stood abruptly. I think that's my cue to leave. Sit down, Dylan snarled, but she was already walking away, heels clicking rapidly on the tile. Let her go, I said. Let Sophie go. It's done. Nothing's done. He pulled Sophie closer. I still have custody. Your word against mine. Actually, Ben's voice came from behind us. 2 police officers flanked him. You have multiple witnesses to assault of a minor, plus Sophie's testimony and evidence. Want to try for kidnapping too? Dylan's grip loosened. Sophie wrenched free, running to me. I held her tight, feeling her shoulders shake. You can't prove anything, Dylan said, but his voice wavered. Maybe not. I handed the USB drive to one of the officers. But the SEC and FBI can. They're very interested in both sets of books, the real ones, and the ones you tried to pin on me. Mom? Sophie looked up at me. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. About any of it. Don't be. I smoothed her hair back, seeing Ben's eyes in her face for the first time. You were protecting me, just like I was protecting you. As the officers led Dylan away, Sophie turned to Ben. So. Should I call you Dad now? Ben's laugh was shaky. Let's start with lunch. We have a lot to talk about. I watched them walk ahead of me, already deep in conversation about coding and security protocols. My revenge had cost me a marriage built on lies, but it had given me something better: truth, freedom. And a family forged in honesty instead of manipulation. Sometimes losing everything was the only way to gain what mattered most. The autumn wind carried the scent of fresh earth as I walked the rows of our first smart farming prototype. Solar-powered sensors blinked among the crops, Sophie's coding bringing life to my agricultural tech designs. Our legacy, built from the ashes of Dylan's betrayal. The investors are impressed. Ben appeared beside me, tablet in hand. Full funding for the next phase. Your mother's farm will be the first full implementation. Sophie will be thrilled. I touched a sensor, remembering how she'd improved my original design. She's already talking about neural networks for crop prediction. She gets that from you. Ben's voice held a note of pride he was still learning to express. The brilliance, the determination. The stubbornness, I added, making him laugh. My phone buzzed, a news alert about Dylan's sentencing. 8 years for fraud and embezzlement. Claire had testified against him, her unborn child another victim of his manipulations. Sometimes I wondered if she'd known about Sophie all along, if that's why she'd finally chosen to help us. Still following the case? Ben asked. Last time. I deleted the alert. Sophie asked about visiting him. What did you tell her? That it's her choice. I turned to face him. Just like it's her choice whether to call you Dad. We can't protect her from everything. No, he agreed. But we can teach her to protect herself. Inside the monitoring station, Sophie sat surrounded by screens, her fingers flying over keyboards. She'd insisted on coming to work with me instead of starting high school, real-world experience, she'd argued. Besides, I've already completed most of their computer science curriculum. She looked up as we entered. Mom. The pattern recognition algorithm caught something weird in Sector 7. Show me. As she pulled up the data, I studied her face, so like Ben's when she was focused, but with my drive, my need to understand everything. She'd used those same traits to expose Dylan's crimes, to protect me when I thought I was protecting her. See? She pointed to an anomaly in the soil composition readings. If we adjust the irrigation here. Sophie, I interrupted gently. There's something we need to discuss. She stiffened. Is this about the letter? From Dylan? Ben and I exchanged looks. You knew? I monitor all our communications. She shrugged, but her voice wavered. Security protocols, remember? Honey. He wants to apologize. She turned back to her screens. Says he's changed. Wants to make amends. What do you want? I asked. I want. She took a deep breath. I want to show him this. What we built without him. How strong we are without him. Pride and pain mingled in my chest. My daughter, turning revenge into redemption, betrayal into growth. Speaking of building things, Ben said, breaking the tension. Your mom's funding came through. Want to help design the neural network? Sophie's eyes lit up. Really? Can we start now? After lunch, I said firmly. Family tradition, remember? As they gathered their things, still debating algorithm specifics, I looked out over our test field. The sensors blinked like stars fallen to earth, each one representing a choice, a consequence, a step toward healing. Dylan had tried to bury us, never realizing we were seeds. Now we'd grown into something stronger, something true. A family built on choice rather than obligation, on understanding rather than control. Mom? Sophie called from the doorway. You coming? Right behind you. I touched the sensor one last time, feeling its steady pulse beneath my fingers. Like a heartbeat, like hope, like the future we'd coded line by line, choice by choice, truth by truth. Some would call it revenge, this rising from the ashes of Dylan's destruction. But standing here, watching Ben and Sophie head toward the car, their heads bent together over some new idea, I knew better. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. And we were just beginning.
I never expected my grandmother's death to spark a war, but looking back, I should have seen it coming. The letter arrived 3 days after we buried her, its crisp white envelope carrying her familiar, elegant handwriting. My name, Callum, written in the careful loops and swirls I'd watched her perfect over countless Sunday afternoons in her garden. My name is Cal, and until last week, I was just the family disappointment, the hawthorn who chose dirt and plants over our prestigious restaurant legacy. Now I'm the unexpected heir to my grandmother's estate, and my entire family has lost their minds. I stood in Grandma Mabel's garden, her letter trembling in my hands as the evening sun cast long shadows across her prized rose bushes. The same roses she'd taught me to tend when I was just a kid with scraped knees and too many questions. You can't be serious. My brother Jackson's voice crackled through my phone's speaker. The house? The whole property? What about the restaurant?
The letter's pretty clear, I said, scanning the words again. She left everything to me, Jax. The house, the garden, even her savings. This is bullshit, Cal, and you know it. His voice had that edge to it, the one that always preceded an explosion. Dad's already talking to lawyers. You need to do the right thing here. I watched a monarch butterfly land on one of Mabel's white roses. The right thing according to who? Dad. You. According to the family. That property could save the restaurant. We're struggling, Cal. You know this. The butterfly took flight, and I followed its path until it disappeared over the garden wall. Maybe if you and Dad hadn't sunk all that money into that ridiculous expansion. Don't. Jackson cut me off. Don't you dare criticize what you abandoned. Some of us actually stuck around to carry on the family legacy. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Funny how the only legacy that matters is the one you chose. Cal. A new voice joined the conversation, Bianca, Jackson's fiancée. Be reasonable. Your grandmother wouldn't have wanted to cause all this drama. She loved the restaurant too. Did she? I walked over to the greenhouse where Mabel and I had spent countless hours. Because according to this letter, she wanted me to have everything specifically to prevent it from being sold off to save the restaurant. The silence on the other end was deafening. Listen, Bianca's voice turned honey-sweet. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? We can discuss this as a family. Your mother's making your favorite pasta. I touched the greenhouse door, remembering how Mabel would always say, "Trust the garden, Cal. It never lies." Unlike people who could wrap manipulation in the guise of family dinner. Thanks, but I have plans. I didn't, but they didn't need to know that. I need to start sorting through Grandma's things. Cal. Jackson started, but I ended the call. Inside the greenhouse, everything was exactly as Mabel had left it. Her gardening gloves still draped over her favorite wooden chair, her tools arranged with military precision on the workbench. I unfolded her letter again, reading the last paragraph that had set this whole mess in motion. My dearest Cal, I know this decision won't be popular, but you're the only one who truly understands what I've built here. This garden isn't just plants and soil. It's a testament to choosing your own path, even when others can't understand it. Don't let them destroy it. And Cal, check behind the loose brick in the greenhouse's north wall. There's something else you need to see. I looked up at the north wall, where generations of ivy had made their home. Somewhere behind those leaves was another piece of Mabel's puzzle, and something told me it would only add fuel to this family fire. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother this time. Your father is very disappointed. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I turned off my phone and started examining the wall. Whatever Mabel had hidden, I needed to find it before anyone else did. Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. This inheritance wasn't just about a house and garden. It was about to expose every crack in our family's carefully maintained facade. The doorbell chimed just as I was prying at the loose brick in the greenhouse. Of course they wouldn't wait for an invitation. Through the glass walls, I could see my parents' silhouettes approaching, my mother's pearls catching the late afternoon light. I quickly smoothed my dirt-covered hands on my jeans and met them at the garden path. My father's disapproving gaze swept over my casual attire, while my mother clutched her designer handbag like a shield. Callum, my father said, using my full name, never a good sign. We need to discuss this situation like adults. I was just working in the greenhouse, I said, gesturing to my clothes. Let me clean up and... Playing in the dirt again? My mother's smile was tight. Some things never change. We settled in Mabel's kitchen, where the ghost of countless Sunday dinners hung in the air. My mother immediately began straightening things, rearranging the fruit bowl as if its slightly askew position personally offended her. The restaurant's in trouble, Cal, my father began, his voice carrying that familiar weight of expectation. Real trouble. Your brother's been working himself to death trying to keep it afloat. I heard about the expansion problems, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The new location isn't performing well? Don't pretend you care now, my father snapped. You walked away from all that responsibility years ago. Left it all on Jackson's shoulders. My mother touched his arm. Everett, please. We're here to talk solutions. She turned to me, her expression softening in that calculated way I knew too well. Sweetheart, this house. It's just too much for one person. And the maintenance costs alone. I can manage, I said firmly. Grandma Mabel taught me everything about maintaining the property. Ah yes, all those hours wasted in that garden when you should have been learning the business, my father muttered. A memory surfaced, 16-year-old me, proudly showing my father the herb garden I'd planted for the restaurant's kitchen. his dismissive wave as he walked away, saying real men don't play in the dirt. I pushed the memory aside. The property's value could save everything, my mother pressed on. The restaurant, our family's legacy. What about Grandma's legacy? I challenged. This garden was her life's work. It's a hobby, Callum. The restaurant is our family's foundation. My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. Don't let them bulldoze you. Remember what Mabel always said about standing your ground. I'm not selling, I said, standing up. Grandma left this place to me for a reason. My father's face darkened. You ungrateful. Everett, my mother interrupted, her voice honey-sweet again. Cal, darling, at least look at the offer we've prepared. It's very generous. She pulled out an envelope from her bag, sliding it across the kitchen table. I didn't touch it. This isn't about money, I said. This is about respecting Grandma's wishes. Respect? My father's laugh was harsh. Where was your respect when you abandoned your family obligations? When you left your brother to shoulder everything alone? I didn't abandon anything, I shot back. I chose a different path. Grandma understood that. Your grandmother. My mother hesitated, exchanging a look with my father. She wasn't thinking clearly near the end. Perhaps if we contest the will. Get out. The words came out quiet but firm. Excuse me. My father's face reddened. I said get out. Both of you. And take your offer with you. My mother's face crumpled in that practiced way that used to make me cave instantly. Cal, please. Now. They left, my father's angry muttering mixing with my mother's theatrical sniffles. As their car pulled away, I noticed something had fallen from my mother's bag. A small notebook I recognized as Grandma Mabel's garden journal. Flipping it open, I found recent entries I'd never seen before, including one dated just weeks before her death. The words made my blood run cold. They're planning something. Must protect Cal. Must hide the truth about. The rest of the page was torn out. I looked back toward the greenhouse where the loose brick waited. Whatever Mabel had hidden, I needed to find it fast. Because now I knew, this wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. There was something else, something my family desperately wanted to keep buried. I was still trying to make sense of Mabel's torn journal entry when Tessa called. You need to get down to the county clerk's office. Now. What? Why? Because your brother and his fiancée just walked in with a stack of papers, and I overheard them talking about property transfers. Tessa worked as a legal secretary there. Something's not right, Cal. 20 minutes later, I was speed walking through the courthouse's marble halls, my muddy boots leaving tracks on the polished floor. I rounded the corner just in time to see Bianca at the clerk's window, sliding documents across the counter with perfectly manicured hands. I need to see those papers, I said, stepping up beside her. Bianca's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. Cal, what a surprise. Family business, you know how it is. Exactly. Which is why I need to see what you're filing. The clerk, an older woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked between us uncertainly. Sir, those documents concern my grandmother's property, I said firmly. I'm the legal owner. Actually, Jackson's voice came from behind me. That's what we're here to correct. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, but his jaw was set with determination. The will was never properly executed. We have proof. Proof? I laughed. What proof? Grandma Mabel wasn't competent when she made those changes, Bianca said smoothly. We have medical documentation. The clerk frowned. I'll need to verify. Here. Bianca produced another document with a flourish. Signed by her doctor. I snatched the paper before anyone could stop me. The signature at the bottom made my stomach drop, Dr. James Rivers. Bianca's father. This is fraud, I said, my voice shaking. Your father never treated Grandma. He consulted on her case, Bianca replied. And as a respected neurologist, his opinion carries weight. Mabel was sharp as a tack until the day she died. I snapped. Everyone knew that. Did they? Jackson stepped closer. Or did you just see what you wanted to see? Face it, Cal. She wasn't thinking clearly when she cut everyone else out. She didn't cut anyone out. She made a choice. A choice you manipulated her into making, Bianca said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. All those hours in the garden, playing the devoted grandson while the rest of the family actually worked. Don't you dare. What's going on here? A new voice cut through the tension. Martin Chun, the family's longtime lawyer, stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand. Martin, Jackson started, we were just filing fraudulent documents, it appears. Martin stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. I was Mabel's attorney for 30 years. I supervised the execution of her will, which was witnessed by 2 independent parties. She was completely competent. Bianca's smile finally cracked. "This isn't your concern." "Actually, it is." Martin turned to the clerk. "Please note that any attempts to transfer this property without proper authority could constitute legal fraud. I'll be filing an injunction immediately." The clerk quickly gathered the papers, stamping them with a large red suspended mark. Jackson grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "You're destroying this family." I looked at his hand, then into his eyes. "No, Jax. You're doing that all on your own." Back in Mabel's garden, I finally found the loose brick and the envelope hidden behind it. Inside was a USB drive and another note. "The truth about the restaurant's finances. Keep this safe. They'll try anything to hide what really happened to the money." My phone buzzed, a text from Bianca. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you're up against." I looked at the USB drive in my hand, then at the garden where Mabel had taught me that growth sometimes requires cutting away the dead parts to save the whole. She'd known this was coming. She'd prepared for it. "Game on," I whispered, pocketing the drive. Because now I understood. This wasn't just about saving her garden anymore. This was about exposing whatever rot had taken root in my family's foundation, no matter the cost. I started toward the house, already planning my next move. Behind me, storm clouds gathered over the garden, promising rain. Perfect weather for unearthing buried secrets. The email from Evergreen Landscapes arrived while I was reviewing the files on Mabel's USB drive. A job offer. Not just any job, but the kind that could define a career. Lead designer for their West Coast division, complete with a 6-figure salary and creative control over major projects. The catch? I'd have to move to Seattle. Leave the garden. Leave everything. I was still staring at the screen when Tessa showed up with coffee and a determined look in her eyes. "You're brooding," she said, setting a cup beside me. "I can smell it from the driveway. Look at this." I turned the laptop toward her, then gestured at the scattered financial documents surrounding it. "And all this? The restaurant's been hemorrhaging money for years. But not because of bad business." Tessa leaned in, scanning the numbers. "Someone's been cooking the books? More like feeding them steroids. The expansion money? Most of it disappeared into offshore accounts." I rubbed my eyes. Jackson's signature is all over these transfers, but the patterns, they're too sophisticated for him. "Bianca," Tessa said quietly. She worked in corporate finance before getting engaged to Jackson. My phone buzzed, another text from Martin Chin. "Meeting tomorrow. Bring the evidence. And Cal, watch your back." The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the window, I spotted a sleek black car I didn't recognize. "Mr. Hawthorne?" A woman in a crisp suit stood at the door, flanked by 2 men carrying briefcases. "I'm Rebecca Walsh, representing Evergreen Landscapes. We were in the area and thought we'd discuss our offer in person." My stomach dropped. No one just happens to be in the area with a full legal team. This isn't a good time. "Actually," she stepped forward, "it's the perfect time. Especially given your current family situation." The way she said it made my skin crawl. In the kitchen, Tessa was quickly gathering the scattered documents. "How did you know about that?" Rebecca smiled. "We do our homework, Mr. Hawthorne. We also know about the attempted property transfer today. You're fighting a losing battle here. We're offering you an exit strategy. The garden can be maintained by professionals. We'll even include it in your contract. But you need to decide quickly." She checked her watch. "Before things get messy, eh?" "What does that mean?" "It means your brother's fiancé has friends in high places. The kind who can make fraud allegations stick, regardless of truth. The kind who can ensure you never work in this industry again." My hands clenched. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering you protection. And an opportunity." She placed her card on the counter. "You have 24 hours. Choose wisely." After they left, Tessa found me in the greenhouse, aggressively pruning Mabel's roses. "Cal, stop. You're butchering them." I looked down at the mangled stems. They knew about the property transfer attempt. Hours after it happened. How? Because this was never just about the garden. Tessa picked up one of the fallen roses. "Think about it. The restaurant's money laundering, Bianca's connections, this sudden job offer. They're trying to get you out of the way. But why? What's so important about this property?" Tessa's eyes widened as she looked past me. "Cal, the zoning maps in Mabel's files. Did you check them?" I hadn't. We rushed back to the laptop, pulling up the documents. There it was, a proposed rezoning plan for the entire neighborhood, with Mabel's property at its center. Prime location for a massive commercial development. "This is what they're after," I whispered. "The garden's just collateral damage." My phone buzzed again, Jackson. Take the job offer, Cal. Please. While you still can. For the first time, I heard real fear in my brother's message. Whatever was happening, he was in deep. Maybe too deep. The rose in Tessa's hand had left a trail of petals on the floor. Red drops like blood, marking a path I had to choose. Run toward safety or stay and fight, knowing it might cost me everything. Mabel's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes the hardest growth comes from standing your ground. I picked up Rebecca's card and slowly tore it in half. Call Martin, I told Tessa. Tell him to bring everything he has tomorrow. It's time to prune the family tree. Martin Chen's office felt too small for the weight of what we were discussing. The financial records from Mabel's USB drive were spread across his desk like a paper trail of betrayal, each document adding another layer to the conspiracy. They're planning to demolish the entire historic district, Martin said, adjusting his glasses. Your grandmother's property is the keystone. Without it, their development plans fall apart. And the restaurant? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A front. They've been laundering money through it for years. Your brother's signature is on everything, but, Martin hesitated. But what? The patterns match other cases I've seen. Cases involving the Rivers family's development company. My phone buzzed, a text from Jackson. Need to talk. Alone. Please. I showed Martin the message. He shook his head. Don't go. It's too risky. But I was already standing. He's still my brother. The restaurant was closed when I arrived, but the lights were on. Through the window, I could see Jackson sitting at the bar, looking older than his 34 years. You shouldn't have come, he said as I walked in. But I'm glad you did. Start talking. He poured 2 whiskeys, sliding one toward me. I never wanted any of this. The restaurant, the expansion, the development deals, it was all Dad and Bianca. I just wanted to make them proud. He laughed bitterly. To survive. You got out, Cal. You had the courage to walk away. I got trapped. So tell the truth. Help me stop them. I can't. His hands shook as he reached for his glass. Bianca's father. He doesn't just destroy businesses, Cal. He destroys lives. The front door chimed. Bianca walked in, followed by my father and 2 men I didn't recognize. Well, isn't this touching? Bianca's smile was sharp. The prodigal brothers reunited at last. You set me up, I said to Jackson. He couldn't meet my eyes. Nothing personal, one of the men said, moving to block the exit. Just business. My father stepped forward. Sign the papers, Cal. Transfer the property. We can all walk away from this. Walk away. I laughed. Like you walked away from Grandma Mabel when she refused to sell? Is that why she died so suddenly? The room went silent. Jackson's face drained of color. Careful, little brother, Bianca warned. Some accusations can't be taken back. Like money laundering? Or fraud? I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. Everything you just said is being recorded. And live-streamed to Tessa. The bigger man started forward, but Bianca held up her hand. You're bluffing. Check your phones, I said. It should be hitting social media right about now. They all reached for their phones. In the chaos, I edged toward the door. You idiot, my father snarled. You'll destroy everything. No, I said. You did that yourself. I'm just pruning away the rot. I made it outside just as police sirens started wailing in the distance. Tessa was waiting in her car around the corner, engine running. Did you get it? I asked as I jumped in. She held up her phone, grinning. Every word. The police and FBI are on their way. Martin's meeting us at the station. As we drove away, I watched the restaurant shrink in the rearview mirror. The place that had imprisoned my brother and corrupted my family, now about to become a crime scene. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from an unknown number. Your grandmother would be proud. But this isn't over. I stared at the message, wondering if it was from Martin or someone else. Because despite everything we'd just exposed, something told me we'd only scratched the surface of what Mabel had discovered. You okay? Tessa asked. I thought about Jackson's haunted eyes, my father's rage, and Bianca's cold smile. About the garden waiting at home, where tomorrow I'd plant new seeds in soil enriched by everything that had died before. No, I said honestly. But I will be. The sirens grew louder behind us, their wail mixing with the night air like justice finally breaking free of its chains. Sometimes I realized revenge doesn't taste like victory. Sometimes it tastes like survival. The wedding invitation arrived exactly 1 month after my father's arrest. Cream-colored paper with gold embossing, like nothing was wrong. Like our family hadn't just imploded in a scandal that made headlines across 3 states. You're not actually going, Tessa said, watching me turn the invitation over in my hands. We were sitting in Mabel's kitchen, where the morning light still couldn't chase away the shadows of recent events. Jackson posted bail for Dad, I said. Used everything he had left. That's not an answer. I traced the embossed letters. Despite everything, the fraud charges, the ongoing investigation, the revelations about Mabel's death, Jackson and Bianca were moving forward with their wedding. At the restaurant, of all places, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. He's your father, Cal. Whatever you think he did, he doesn't deserve this. Another message followed. Jackson needs his brother there. Please don't make this harder. I laughed bitterly. Make this harder? They tried to frame me for fraud, threaten me with thugs, and possibly. I couldn't finish the sentence about Mabel. The investigation was still ongoing, but the evidence pointed to her death being far from natural. Which is exactly why you shouldn't go, Tessa insisted. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Martin Chen's car in the driveway. It's not good, he said as soon as I let him in. The Rivers family is pushing back hard. Their lawyers are trying to discredit the evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally. But the live stream? They're saying it was edited, manipulated. Martin looked exhausted. And Jackson? He's changed his statement. Says you set them up, that you're the one who orchestrated everything. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. Through the window, I could see Mabel's garden, where the roses she'd loved so much were beginning to wilt. Why would he do that? Because I had to. Jackson's voice came from the doorway. None of us had heard him come in. He looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. They have Mom, Cal. What? She's resting at Bianca's family estate. They're calling it a nervous breakdown, but... He swallowed hard. I had to change my statement. I had to protect her. The pieces clicked into place. The wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a show of force. A message that the Rivers family was still in control. The invitation, I said slowly. It's a trap, isn't it? Jackson wouldn't meet my eyes. Just come to the wedding, Cal. Please. Make a speech, wish us well, show everyone that the family drama was overblown. Maybe then what? They'll let Mom go. They'll forget about destroying everything Mabel built. They'll let us live, Jackson whispered. After he left, I stood in the garden, surrounded by dying roses. Everything Mabel had created, everything she'd fought to protect, was slipping away. And now I had to choose between justice for her death and my mother's safety. There might be another way, Martin said, joining me outside. But it's risky, and you'd have to trust me completely. I looked at the wilting garden, remembering Mabel's words about growth requiring sacrifice. About how sometimes you had to cut away what you love to save what matters most. Whatever it takes, I said. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Bianca. Looking forward to having the whole family together again. Don't forget to wear black. It's a formal affair after all. The threat wasn't even subtle anymore. Wear black like we're all attending a funeral. Maybe we were. I picked up a dead rose, its petals crumbling in my hand. Tell me the plan, Martin, and then help me find a suit. Because sometimes, to save what you love, you have to walk straight into the dragon's lair. Even if you know you might not walk back out. Tessa touched my arm. Cal. I know, I said, watching the rose petals scatter in the wind. But Mabel taught me that every garden needs pruning sometimes. Even if it means cutting all the way down to the roots. The restaurant gleamed like a funeral parlor, all black ties and forced smiles. I adjusted my dark suit, the same one I'd worn to Mabel's funeral, and walked into the lion's den. Bianca had transformed the place, replacing its warm family atmosphere with cold elegance. Black roses everywhere, their thorns prominently displayed. A message just for me. Cal. My mother's voice trembled as she approached, flanked by two of Bianca's cousins, men with hard eyes and concealed weapons. You came. Her hands shook as she reached for me, and I saw the faint bruising around her wrist. My blood boiled, but I kept my face neutral. Martin's plan required patience. Wouldn't miss it, I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Where's the happy couple? Making an entrance, of course. Mayor Davidson appeared beside me, champagne in hand. Though I must say, I'm more interested in your work, Cal. That community garden project of yours has everyone talking. Bianca materialized before I could respond, resplendent in white. Mayor Davidson, I'm so glad you could make it. Though perhaps we should discuss the development proposal, rather than gardening. Actually, the mayor said, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Seems there are some irregularities in the paperwork. A commotion near the entrance cut him off. Jackson burst in, his face ashen. The FBI. There! The doors flew open. Agents poured in, led by Martin Chun, not just a lawyer, but a federal investigator who'd been building this case for years. Nobody move. Martin's voice boomed. We have warrants for multiple arrests. Bianca's smile turned razor-sharp. This is a private event. Whatever you think you have. We have everything, I said quietly. The real estate fraud, the money laundering, the offshore accounts. And Mabel's autopsy results. Her composure cracked. You're bluffing. The garden soil, Bianca. Did you know Mabel tested it regularly? Kept records of every chemical change. I stepped closer, including the poison that showed up 3 days before she died. One of Bianca's cousins reached inside his jacket. 3 agents immediately drew weapons. It's over, Martin announced. Bianca Rivers, Everett Hawthorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and first-degree murder. My father, who'd been silent until now, lunged for me. You ungrateful. Jackson caught him, surprising everyone. Stop, Dad. Just stop. The mayor watched in shock as agents led Bianca away. My God, I had no idea. That's why they wanted the garden gone, I said. It held the evidence. Mabel knew what they were doing, so they killed her. But she'd already prepared her revenge. The inheritance, Jackson whispered. She left it to you because I was the only one who would understand the garden's secrets. I touched one of the black roses. She taught me that every plant tells a story if you know how to read it. As the chaos unfolded, my mother collapsed into my arms, finally free from her captors. I'm so sorry, Cal. We should have listened. Mrs. Hawthorne, Martin interrupted gently. We'll need your statement about your detention at the Rivers estate. I watched them lead my father away in handcuffs, saw Bianca's mask of sophistication crumble as agents read her rights. The restaurant, the source of so much family strife, would likely be seized as evidence. Jackson stood alone by the altar, his world imploding. What happens now? Now! I looked at the black roses, thinking of Mabel's garden waiting at home. Now we start over. Plant something new. Together? He sounded like the brother I'd once known, before ambition and greed poisoned everything. Maybe, if you're willing to get your hands dirty. The mayor cleared his throat. Speaking of new growth, Cal, I'd love to discuss expanding your community garden project. The city could use more of your expertise. Outside, police lights painted the night in red and blue. Inside, among the wreckage of what was supposed to be a wedding, I felt Mabel's presence. She'd known it would end this way. Not with a celebration of love, but with justice finally blooming through the cracks of our broken family. I loosened my black tie. Tomorrow, I'd plant white roses in the garden. But tonight, there was one more truth to unearth. 1 year later, I stood in Mabel's garden, my garden now, watching Jackson struggle with a particularly stubborn root. His prison-pale skin was slowly gaining color under the summer sun. You're doing it wrong, I said, kneeling beside him. Here, like this. I demonstrated the proper angle, remembering Mabel teaching me the same lesson years ago. 3 months into his community service, and my brother was finally learning the difference between weeds and wildflowers. The judge had been surprisingly poetic in her sentencing. Help restore what his actions had helped destroy. The mayor called again, Tessa said, appearing with 3 glasses of lemonade. The community garden network is ready to expand to the next district. I nodded, watching a monarch butterfly land on one of Mabel's white roses, the ones I'd replanted after the wedding that never was. The restaurant was gone now, converted into the city's first urban farming education center. Sometimes karma has a green thumb. Mom's therapy is going well, Jackson said quietly, accepting the lemonade. She's talking about volunteering at the center, teaching kids about herbs and cooking. Our father's trial had broken something in her, but like the garden after winter, she was slowly coming back to life. Some plants need severe pruning to grow back stronger. Found something else too, Jackson added, pulling a weathered envelope from his pocket. Behind the old restaurant's wine cellar wall during demolition. It's from Mabel. My hands trembled as I opened it. The paper was old, but the words were clear. My dearest boys, if you're reading this, then everything has happened as I feared it might. But remember, even the hardest soil can nurture new growth if you're willing to work it together. There's more, Jackson said, his voice thick. Look at the date. The letter was written the day before she died. She'd known what was coming, had planted the seeds of justice even in her final hours. Cal! My mother's voice came from the garden path. She looked smaller now, humbler, but her eyes were clear. The Heritage Rose Society called. They want to register Mabel's white hybrid officially. Did they say what they'll name it? She smiled softly. They're calling it Mabel's Truth. I looked around at what we'd built from the ashes of our family's implosion. The garden had expanded, now feeding 3 local food banks. The education center was thriving. Even Bianca's father's development company had crumbled under federal investigation. You know what's weird? Jackson said, finally defeating the stubborn root. I always thought the restaurant was our legacy. But Mabel knew better. She saw what really needed to grow. A familiar voice seemed to whisper in the breeze. Trust the garden, Cal. It never lies. There's something else, Tessa said, holding up her tablet. Remember that mysterious text you got? Martin finally traced it. It wasn't from him. Then who? Margaret Rivers, Bianca's grandmother. Turns out she and Mabel were friends in college. She's been feeding information to the FBI for years, trying to stop her own family's corruption. I thought about karma again, about how the truth finds its way to the surface like a determined seedling pushing through concrete. The garden needs a new section, I decided. Something to mark everything that's happened. Any ideas? Jackson stood, brushing dirt from his knees. What about a maze? But instead of walls, we use flowering vines. Something that looks complicated from the outside, but actually leads to something simple. Like truth, our mother added softly. I picked up my gardening tools, Mabel's old ones that still fit my hands perfectly. Better get started then. These things take time to grow. As we worked together under the summer sun, I realized that revenge, like gardening, isn't about destruction. It's about clearing space for something better to grow. Mabel had taught me that, in her own way, through every seed we'd planted together. The butterfly took flight, rising above the garden where our family was slowly, steadily, putting down new roots. Different from the ones we'd had before, but stronger for having weathered the storm. Sometimes the best revenge is simply growing beyond what others thought possible.
I never meant to snoop through my husband's phone. Trust had always been our foundation, but that changed the moment I saw the notification pop up on his screen while he was in the shower. A message from Claire, written in a peculiar mix of French and English that made my heart skip a beat. My name is Harper, and until that morning I thought I had the perfect marriage. On SC Voigt tonight at the usual spot? J'ai something important to tell you. Don't tell it. They had to be me. As a linguist, the code switching between languages caught my attention immediately. It wasn't casual Franglish, it felt deliberate, like they were trying to obscure the meaning from someone. From me. I heard the shower turn off and quickly placed Ethan's phone back on the nightstand, exactly as I'd found it. My hands were trembling as I pretended to fold laundry, my mind racing with possibilities I didn't want to consider. Hey, beautiful, Ethan said, emerging from the bathroom with a towel around his waist. Water droplets traced paths down his chest, and for a moment I saw him as I always had, the kind, gentle veterinarian I'd fallen in love with. Everything okay? You look a bit pale. Just tired, I lied, forcing a smile. Long week of translations. He crossed the room and kissed my forehead, leaving a damp spot that felt like it was burning into my skin. Don't work too hard. We've got dinner at my parents' tonight, remember? My stomach clenched. The monthly dinner at the Callahan estate. Another reminder that I'd married into a family that saw me as an outsider. Of course, I said, watching him get dressed for work. Will Claire be there? Pause before his answer was microscopic, but I caught it. No, why would she be? Just asking. She seems to be around a lot lately. Ethan's shoulders tensed slightly as he buttoned his shirt. She's an old friend, Harper. You know that. An old friend who had been showing up at his clinic with increasing frequency, who texted in code, who wanted to meet him secretly. The weight of unspoken words hung between us like a storm cloud. I should head out, he said, checking his watch. Early surgery today. Love you. Love you too, I replied automatically, the words tasting different now. After he left, I sat on our bed, staring at his side of the closet. The expensive suits his mother insisted he wear, the casual clothes he preferred, all hanging there like normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. My phone buzzed, a text from Lydia, my sister-in-law. Looking forward to seeing you tonight, dear. Mother wants to discuss the summer house arrangements. Wear something appropriate this time. I deleted the message without responding. Lydia, with her perfect outfits and sharp smiles, never missed a chance to remind me that I didn't quite measure up to Callahan's standards. But right now, her usual jabs felt trivial compared to the mystery unfolding on my husband's phone. I pulled out my laptop and opened my translation work, but the words blurred together. Instead, I found myself typing Claire Bennett into social media. Her profile was full of recent photos, charity galas, business meetings, and yes, several casual shots at Ethan's veterinary clinic. In one, they were both laughing, heads close together as they looked at something on his phone. The caption read, "Some secrets are worth keeping. Winking face #oldfriends #TBT." My finger hovered over the image. The timestamp showed it was posted 3 weeks ago, the same week Ethan started having emergency calls in the evenings. Tonight, while we sat through another tense family dinner, my husband would be keeping secrets with Claire Bennett, and I had to decide what I was going to do about it. Callahan Estate loomed before us like a fortress as Ethan pulled into the circular driveway. I smoothed my dress, a designer piece I'd saved 3 months to buy, hoping it would pass Margaret's inspection. Text message from this morning still burned in my mind, but I forced a smile as Ethan squeezed my hand. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, noticing how his jaw tightened. He always got tense before these dinners. The massive front door swung open before we reached it. Lydia stood there, perfectly coiffed in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "You're late," she said, air-kissing my cheek. "Mother's been asking about you, Ethan." "Traffic," he muttered, but I caught the slight tremor in his voice. The same tremor I'd heard when he denied meeting Claire tonight. The foyer echoed with our footsteps as we followed Lydia to the formal dining room. Margaret Callahan sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, while Thomas studied financial reports even at dinner. "Darling," Margaret said, rising to embrace Ethan. Her eyes swept over me, lingering on my dress. "Harper. Interesting choice of attire. Primebid bakaratort." The dress was perfect, I'd made sure of it. But nothing was ever good enough for Margaret Callahan. "Speaking of choices," Lydia chimed in, taking her seat, "I ran into Claire at the country club today. She mentioned something about the clinic, Ethan." My husband's fork clattered against his plate. "Just some consulting work," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Consulting?" Thomas finally looked up from his papers. "I wasn't aware the clinic needed financial consulting." "It doesn't," Ethan said, but Lydia was already talking over him. "Claire said she's helping with some exciting new developments. Didn't you want to tell everyone about that, brother dear?" The room felt suddenly airless. I watched Ethan's face, seeing the panic flash across it before he composed himself. "It's still in the early stages," he mumbled. "Well, I think it's wonderful," Margaret declared. "Claire has always had such a good head for business. Remember when you two dated in college, Ethan?" My water glass froze halfway to my lips. Dated? Ethan had never mentioned that. "Mother," Ethan warned, but Lydia was grinning like a cat with cream. "Oh, Harper didn't know?" They were quite the couple. "Everyone thought they'd end up together, didn't they, Daddy?" Thomas grunted in agreement, and I felt the room spin slightly. The secret meetings, the coded messages, the consulting work, everything shifted into a new, horrifying perspective. "It was barely 2 months," Ethan said, finally looking at me. "It wasn't serious. Serious enough that Claire still keeps that photo of you two in Paris," Lydia said innocently. "The one from your graduation trip?" I pushed my plate away, untouched. "Excuse me," I managed, standing up. "I need some air." "Harper, wait!" Ethan started to rise, but Margaret's voice cut through the tension. "Let her go, dear. Some people simply aren't built for family discussions." I fled to the garden, gulping in the cool evening air. Behind me, I heard the French doors open and close. Expecting Ethan, I turned, only to find Lydia approaching with 2 wine glasses. "Peace offering," she said, extending one to me. I took it warily, watching her settle onto a garden bench. She said, swirling her wine. Claire's always been more our speed. The right background, the right connections. But Ethan chose you. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. For now. What's that supposed to mean? Just that things change. People realize their mistakes. Thinking of which, Claire mentioned she's looking at properties in our neighborhood. Isn't that interesting? My grip tightened on the wine glass. Why are you telling me this? Lydia stood, brushing invisible dust from her dress. Consider it a friendly warning. Some battles aren't worth fighting, Harper. Especially when you've already lost. She left me there, holding a glass of wine I wouldn't drink, while somewhere across town my husband was meeting the woman he'd never told me about. The woman his family clearly wished he'd married instead of me. I pulled out my phone and opened Claire's social media again. There it was, the Paris photo Lydia mentioned, buried in her old posts. Ethan and Claire, young and laughing, the Eiffel Tower behind them. The caption read, "Some memories never fade. Red heart." My hands stopped shaking as a cold clarity settled over me. If they wanted a battle, they'd get one. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I followed my husband to work. Ethan's emergency call the previous night had stretched until midnight, and when he finally came home, he smelled of expensive perfume and guilt. I parked across from his veterinary clinic, watching the morning unfold through my windshield. The familiar parade of patients, dogs pulling at leashes, cats in carriers, the occasional exotic pet. But at 10:30, a sleek Mercedes pulled into the staff parking lot. Claire stepped out, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage payment. My phone buzzed, a text from Lydia. "Thought you might want to know Claire's meeting with our family accountant today. Something about clinic investments." I switched off my phone and slipped into the clinic through the side entrance, nodding to the receptionist who knew me as Dr. Callahan's wife. The break room connected to Ethan's office through a thin wall, and voices carried if you knew where to listen. "The paperwork's ready," Claire was saying. "Once you sign, everything changes. I don't know about this anymore." Ethan's voice was strained. Harper doesn't understand our world, Ethan. She never will. Your parents see that, why can't you?" A pause. My heart hammered against my ribs. "It's not that simple," Ethan said finally. "She's my wife. And I'm the one who's been here all along. The one who knows what you really want." Claire's voice softened. "Remember Paris? How simple things were then. That was different. We were different. Were we? Or did you just settle for less because it was easier than fighting for what you really wanted?" I'd heard enough. I pushed away from the wall, but my elbow caught a stack of files. They crashed to the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet clinic. The office door flew open. Ethan stood there, face pale. Behind him, Claire looked more annoyed than surprised. "Harper," Ethan started, but I was already moving. "Don't." My voice came out steady, surprising even me. "Just don't. This isn't what you think," Claire said, stepping forward. "We're discussing business investments. The clinic needs what? Your money? Your connections? Or just you?" "Harper, please." Ethan reached for my arm, but I jerked away. "When were you going to tell me about the buyout?" The words were a shot in the dark, but Claire's slight flinch told me I'd hit something. "That's what this is about, isn't it? The paperwork, the meetings, the secrets?" "It's a business opportunity," Claire said smoothly. "The clinic could be so much more with proper backing. Ethan knows that. And I'm just in the way." I turned to my husband. "Is that why you've been lying? Meeting her in secret, hiding your past?" "I wanted to protect you," he said weakly. "From what? The truth? That your family's finally found a way to get what they want." I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. "A way to replace me with someone more suitable?" "That's not," Ethan started, but his phone chimed. Another message. I watched his face as he read it, saw the color drain away. "What is it?" Claire asked, moving closer to him than any business partner should. "Mother," he whispered. "She's calling an emergency family meeting. Tonight." Claire's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile. "Perfect timing. We can announce the partnership then." "Partnership," I repeated. The word tasted like ashes. "Is that what we're calling it?" I turned to leave, but Claire's voice stopped me. "Harper, the clinic's future isn't personal. It's just business." I looked back at them, the golden couple from the Paris photo, standing in an office that suddenly felt like it had never been mine to share. "Everything's personal with the Callahans," I said. "But don't worry. I'm done playing by their rules." I walked out of the clinic, my mind already racing with possibilities. If they wanted to play hardball, fine. I had languages, codes, and secrets of my own. And unlike Claire, I had nothing left to lose. Behind me, I heard Ethan call my name, but I didn't stop. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. They can only be avenged. I ended up at my parents' small townhouse, the only place I could think clearly anymore. Mom was grading papers at the kitchen table, her reading glasses perched on her nose, while Dad tended to his beloved orchids in the window. The familiar scene made my throat tight. "I think my marriage is over," I said, dropping into a chair. Mom set down her red pen. Dad turned from his plants. Neither seemed surprised. "We saw the clinic's financial records," Dad said quietly. "They're public, sweetheart. Claire Bennett's company filed paperwork last week." Of course they had checked. 2 retired professors who taught me to always verify sources, to look beyond the surface meaning. I should have done the same with my marriage. "The emergency family meeting is tonight," I said, staring at the worn kitchen table where I'd done my homework for years. "They're going to announce the buyout. And probably more." "What are you going to do?" Mom asked, her academics mind already analyzing the problem. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meeting moved to Le Jardin Restaurant. 7 p.m. Dress appropriately. Margaret." Le Jardin. The same restaurant where Ethan had proposed 3 years ago. The cruelty wasn't lost on me. "I'm going to fight," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "But I need your help." Dad pulled a folder from his briefcase. "We thought you might say that. Remember my friend in corporate law?" He spread out documents across the table. Financial records, property deeds, and something that made my heart stop, incorporation papers for the clinic dated 5 years ago, before I'd even met Ethan. "Claire's name is on everything," I whispered, scanning the papers. "She's been involved from the beginning." "There's more," Mom said gently. "Check the witnesses' signatures." There it was in elegant script, Lydia Callahan. She'd known everything, had probably orchestrated it all, feeding information to Margaret while playing the concerned sister. My phone buzzed again. "Ethan, where are you? We need to talk before tonight." I ignored it, focusing on the documents. "The clinic's in trouble, isn't it?" "These numbers." Dad nodded. "It's been operating at a loss for months. Claire's company has been keeping it afloat with loans. Loans that come due next week," Mom added. "The timing of this partnership isn't coincidental." Another text, this time from Lydia. "Wear black tonight. Suits the occasion." Face blowing a kiss. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need to go home and change. If they want a show tonight, I'll give them one. "Harper," Mom called as I reached the door. "Remember what I taught you about translations?" I paused. "That the true meaning isn't always in the words themselves?" She smiled sadly. "Sometimes the story we think we're reading isn't the one being told." At home, I found Ethan waiting. He looked terrible, his usual confidence replaced by something closer to desperation. "I can explain everything," he started. "Can you explain Paris?" I interrupted. Or the incorporation papers? Or how your clinic's been secretly owned by Claire's company since before we met? He flinched. How did you? It doesn't matter. What matters is tonight. Are you going to tell them you're choosing me, or should I not bother showing up? Harper, please. Clinic is everything to me. Without Claire's help, you might have had to stand up to your family years ago. I moved past him toward our bedroom. The meeting's at Le Jardin now. Your mother's idea, I assume. His silence was answer enough. I pulled out the dress I'd been saving for our anniversary, deep red, not the black Lydia suggested. One last question, Ethan. That night you proposed at Le Jardin, was that your idea? Or was that orchestrated too? He couldn't meet my eyes. I'll pick you up at 6:30. Don't bother, I said, laying out the dress. Il mi ayudar. I have a stop to make first. As he left, I opened my laptop and pulled up the translation project I'd been working on. Legal documents, as it happened. I might not have Claire's money or Lydia's social connections, but I had something they didn't, the ability to read between the lines. And tonight, every single truth was coming out. Le Jardin's crystal chandeliers cast a deceptively warm glow over the private dining room. I arrived 15 minutes early, my red dress a deliberate rebellion against Lydia's black dress directive. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. Madam Callahan, your party is... It's still Winslow, I corrected, scanning the room. Empty, except for one person, Claire, wearing a perfectly tailored black dress, examining a document at the head of the table. She looked up, unsurprised. Harper. Early as usual. Interesting choice of venue, I said, taking the seat opposite her. Was this where you and Ethan planned everything? Back when you first invested in his clinic. Her perfectly manicured fingers tapped the document. You've done your homework. But you're missing crucial pieces of the puzzle. Like what? The part where you've been manipulating him for years? Or how Lydia helped you do it? Claire's laugh was surprisingly genuine. You think I'm the villain here? Sweetheart, I'm just cleaning up Lydia's mess. As usual. Before I could respond, the door opened. Lydia swept in, followed by Margaret and Thomas. Finn trailed behind, looking trapped. Harper, Margaret's voice could have frozen champagne. That dress is... bold. Like your choice of restaurant? I smiled, noting how Lydia positioned herself between Ethan and me. Actually, Claire stood, I chose the venue. For symmetry. Thomas cleared his throat. Let's get to business. The papers are ready. Almost. Claire pulled out a folder. Just waiting on one signature. Harper's. The room went silent. Finn's head snapped up. What? Lydia's voice cracked slightly. She has no part in this. Actually, she does. Claire slid a document across the table. The clinic's original incorporation papers list both Callahan siblings as beneficiaries. Ethan and Lydia. My hands remained folded in my lap. But Lydia sold her share. To you, Harper. Through a shell company 3 months ago. Claire's smile was razor sharp. She was desperate for cash after her last failed business venture. She didn't read the fine print. Lydia's face drained of color. That's impossible. I never. The transfer documents are in French, I cut in, finally understanding. A language you claim to speak but actually can't. Unlike me. Margaret's hand gripped her wine glass too tightly. This is absurd. But Thomas was already reviewing the papers, his businessman's eyes catching what his daughter had missed. It's legal, he said quietly. Harper owns 40% of the clinic. Without her signature, there can be no buyout. Finn stared at me, then at his sister. Lydia, what did you do? What she always does, I said, standing. She overplayed her hand. Those late-night calls you thought were between Ethan and Claire? They were Lydia, begging Claire to cover her gambling debts. You little, Lydia lunged forward, but Claire caught her arm. Enough, Claire snapped. This ends now. Harper, name your price. I pulled out my own document. Already done. Full ownership of the clinic transfers to Ethan. Alone. No family interference, no outside investors. And in return? Thomas asked. I walk away. From everything. The marriage, the family, all of it. I met Ethan's devastated gaze. It's what you wanted, isn't it? Freedom from having to choose? Harper, please, he started, but Margaret cut him off. Done. Thomas, call the lawyers. Not done, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. One more condition. Tell them, Claire. Tell them what really happened in Paris. Claire's composure cracked just slightly. That's not relevant. I stood, gathering my things. Everything's relevant when you're rewriting history. You have until midnight to decide. Oh, and Lydia? I paused at the door. Black really isn't your color. I walked out of Le Jardin into the cool night air, leaving behind a room full of carefully constructed lies beginning to unravel. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is letting them destroy themselves. I smiled, hailing a cab. The night wasn't over yet. The midnight deadline came and went. I sat in my parents' guest room, surrounded by documents and translations, when my laptop pinged with an email from Claire. Just 3 words. Check the news. Breaking news headlines screamed across my screen. Callahan Veterinary Clinic under investigation. Below that, financial irregularities force immediate closure. My phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls from Ethan. Texts from Lydia, all caps and rage. A formal message from Thomas's lawyer requesting an urgent meeting. They called my bluff and raised the stakes. Now dozens of employees would lose their jobs, and countless animals would lose their care provider. All because I'd pushed too hard. I grabbed my keys, but my mother blocked the doorway. Where are you going? To fix this. My voice cracked. I never wanted to destroy everything. She took my keys. That's exactly what they're counting on. Your guilt. Your decency. A new text lit up my phone from Claire. Meeting. Your office. Now. I worked as a translator for an international law firm downtown. At 1 a.m., the building was desert quiet, but the lights in my office were on. Claire sat at my desk, looking perfectly composed despite the hour. Quite a mess you've made, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Me? You're the ones who shut down an essential business out of spite. No, Harper. We shut it down because we found evidence of embezzlement. She slid a file across the desk. In your name. My hand shook as I opened it. Transfer records, all technically legal, all tied to my ownership stake. All fabricated. This is impossible. I never. Of course you didn't. But Lydia did. Using your credentials, your passwords, your identity. Claire's smile was almost sympathetic. She's been planning this for months, waiting for you to make your move. The room spun slightly. Why are you telling me this? 'Cause unlike the others, I actually care about Ethan. And that clinic. She leaned forward. Sign over your shares, take the fall for the financial irregularities, and everything goes back to normal. The clinic reopens, no charges filed. And if I don't? Then tomorrow, Margaret releases evidence that you've been stealing from the clinic for years. Ethan's reputation stays clean, but yours? She shrugged. Well, good luck finding work as a translator with a fraud conviction. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, please, Harper. Whatever they're offering, take it. I can't watch you go to prison. He knows about this? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. He knows enough. Claire stood. You have 1 hour. Sign the papers, take the deal, or face the consequences. After she left, I sat in my dark office, staring at the city lights below. Everything I'd done to protect myself, to fight back, had only given them more ammunition. My mother's words echoed. Sometimes the best revenge is letting them destroy themselves. But what if they destroyed me first? My computer hummed to life as I logged into my work server. Years of translations, contracts, and documents scrolled past, including, buried in a folder from 3 years ago, the original Paris documents I'd translated for Claire's company. The ones that had started everything. I'd never read them carefully before. Had never needed to. But now, my hands flew across the keyboard, pulling up file after file. French contracts, German amendments, Italian addendums. A pattern emerged, one that made my breath catch. A new email arrived from Lydia. 1 hour left, dear sister. Tick-tock. I looked at the papers Claire wanted me to sign, then back at my screen. The truth that had been hiding in plain sight for years, wrapped in layers of languages and lies. My phone rang, Ethan again. This time, I answered. Don't sign anything, he said immediately. Harper, I remember Paris now. All of it. And I know what Claire. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, then at the documents, then at my computer screen with its web of international transactions and hidden truths. They'd pushed me to my lowest point, thinking I'd break. Instead, they'd pushed me right where I needed to be, at the bottom, with nowhere to go but up. And up meant burning everything down. Callahan family gathered in Thomas's study, exactly where I knew they'd be. Margaret perched on the leather sofa, Lydia paced by the window, and Claire stood near Thomas's desk, all of them waiting for me to sign away everything. I walked in wearing the same red dress from Le Jardin, but this time carrying a thick folder. You're late, Lydia snapped. Where's Ethan? Probably still trying to get his phone working again, I said, watching Claire's expression flicker. Interesting timing for his service to cut out, right after he mentioned Paris. Thomas cleared his throat. The papers, Harper. Your hour is up. I placed my folder on his desk. You're right. It is. I pulled out a stack of documents, the original translations I'd done years ago before I even met Ethan. Let's talk about what really happened in Paris. Claire stepped forward. That's not relevant. It's all relevant. I spread out the papers. These contracts, written in French, German, and Italian, detail how Claire's company systematically stripped assets from failing veterinary clinics across Europe. Buy them out, gut them, sell off the pieces. Margaret waved her hand dismissively. Business is business. Except these clinics weren't failing naturally. They were sabotaged. By someone who created false financial records, just like the ones you're trying to pin on me now. Lydia's pacing stopped. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. 'Cause I was the one who translated the documents. I just never knew what they were for. Until now. I turned to Thomas. Did you know Claire's company is under investigation in 3 countries? That's why she needs the clinic, to hide money before the authorities freeze her assets. Enough. Claire composure craquée. Sign the papers or go to jail. Those are your options. No, Ethan's voice came from the doorway. He looked disheveled but determined. Those aren't her options. Ethan, Margaret started, but he cut her off. I remember Paris now, Claire. You didn't just break my heart, you stole my original business plan. The one I showed you the night before you disappeared. He moved to stand beside me. The plan Harper found in your company's files, written in my handwriting, dated 3 years before you claimed it was yours. Claire's face went white. That's not the truth. I finished. Like how you've been using Lydia's gambling debts to manipulate her. Or how you convinced Margaret that I was trying to ruin the family name when you were the one destroying it. I did what I had to do, Claire said, her voice hard. This family needed saving from people like you. No, Thomas spoke finally, studying the documents on his desk. We needed saving from people like you. He pressed a button on his phone. Send them in. The study door opened again. Two serious-looking men in suits entered, showing federal badges. Miss Bennett, one said, we'd like to ask you some questions about your company's international holdings. Everything happened quickly after that. Claire's arrest. Lydia's breakdown, confessing everything. Margaret's shocked silence as her perfect world crumbled. Through it all, Ethan held my hand. I'm so sorry, he whispered as we watched the agents lead Claire away. I should have seen it sooner. Should have stood up to them. We both should have seen a lot of things, I said, squeezing his hand. But we see each other now. Thomas approached us, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The clinic, he said gruffly. It needs to reopen. People depend on it. He held out a pen. Sign these. The real ones this time. Papers transferred full ownership to Ethan and me. No strings, no hidden clauses. Why? I asked. Because sometimes, he glanced at Margaret, still sitting shell-shocked on the sofa, family isn't about control. It's about trust. He turned to Ethan. Something I forgot a long time ago. Lydia stood alone by the window, watching Claire's car disappear down the driveway. What happens now? Now, I said, taking the pen from Thomas, we rebuild. All of us. I signed the papers, then offered the pen to her. Starting with the truth. She took it with trembling fingers, and as she signed, I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes, hope. Outside, the sun was rising over the Callahan estate. A new day, a new beginning. Not everything was fixed, but at least now we were facing it together. And that was a truth worth fighting for. 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated clinic, watching Ethan perform surgery through the observation window. His hands moved with confident precision, healing a German shepherd that had been hit by a car. The dog's owner, a young girl, waited anxiously in reception, just as I had waited through my own storm of uncertainty. Clinic had changed. We'd kept the Callahan name but reimagined everything else. The walls now displayed framed translations of healing words from different languages: courage, hope, renewal. A reminder of how we'd found our way back. He's good at putting things back together, Lydia said, appearing beside me. She looked different now, softer somehow, without the sharp edges of desperate ambition. Weekly therapy and a gambling addiction program had helped. So are you, I replied, noting the stack of account books in her arms. She'd insisted on working here, doing honest books this time, paying her debt to the family one balanced ledger at a time. The surgery light clicked off. Success. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. Dinner tonight? I found your mother's recipe for coq au vin. These new Friday dinners were different from the old ones. No more power plays or hidden agendas, just careful steps toward understanding. Thomas had retired, letting Ethan run the clinic his own way. Margaret was learning to love without controlling, though old habits died hard. Mail came, Lydia said, handing me an envelope. The return address was a federal prison. Claire's letter was short. I never meant for it to go so far. Paris was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful, not the start of a lie. Maybe that's what happens when we try to force life into the shape we think it should be, instead of letting it be what it is. Take care of him. Take care of all of them. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket, next to the ultrasound picture I hadn't shown anyone yet. Some revelations needed perfect timing. Ethan emerged from surgery, still in his scrubs. The dog will be fine, he said, wrapping an arm around me. Just needed someone to believe in him. Like father, like future child? I whispered. His hand froze on my waist. Are you? I nodded, watching joy spread across his face, pure and untainted by anyone else's expectations. Lydia squealed and hugged us both, then quickly composed herself. I'll reschedule your afternoon appointments, she said, wiping her eyes as she hurried away. Later that night, as we walked home to our new house, modest but ours, Ethan stopped suddenly. I found something in the old clinic files, he said. A letter from my father to his father, written when Dad was my age. He wanted to be a teacher, did you know that? But his father convinced him that business was the only acceptable path. Is that why he let you keep the clinic? I think he finally realized that legacy isn't about controlling the future. It's about giving it room to grow. We reached our front door, but I paused before going in. The moon hung full and bright, like the night I'd found that first text message in French. Everything had changed since then, and nothing. Do you ever regret it? I asked. Choosing this life over the one they planned for you? Ethan touched my still flat stomach, his answer in the gentleness of his hands. I chose love, he said simply. Everything else just fell into place. Inside, I had translations waiting, honest work for honest pay. Tomorrow, we'd have dinner with both our families, all the sharp edges slowly smoothing into something new and real. And in 7 months, we'd add another chapter to our story. My mother had been right about revenge. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, but about building something so beautiful that their shadows can't touch it. I hung my red dress in the back of the closet. I wouldn't need it anymore, but I'd keep it, a reminder that sometimes you have to fight for your happy ending, even if the battle leaves a few scars. Some things, after all, are worth the price of admission.
I should have known something was wrong the moment Vanessa's face lit up at the dinner table. My sister-in-law never shows genuine enthusiasm unless she's about to go for someone's throat. My name is Harper, and until last night, I thought I had finally reached a point where I could sit through a family dinner without feeling like my heart was being ripped out. It's been 14 months since we lost Oliver, my 8-year-old son, and while the pain never really goes away, I'd learned to carry it differently. I've been thinking, Vanessa announced, swirling her wine glass with perfectly manicured fingers, about Oliver's college fund. The table went silent. My husband Ethan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Even his parents, Charles and Linda, stopped eating their roast beef to stare at Vanessa. Since Alex is heading to college next year, she continued, her voice dripping with what she probably thought was compassion. And the money is just sitting there? I felt the room tilt sideways. The college fund. Oliver's college fund. The one we'd started the day he was born. The one that still had his crayon-drawn Harvard application stuck to its folder. The one I couldn't bring myself to close because it felt like admitting he'd never need it. Vanessa, Ethan warned, his hand finding mine under the table. I'm just being practical, she pressed on, ignoring the warning signs. Alex has his heart set on Yale, and with Greg's music career being what it is. She shot an accusatory glance at her husband, who suddenly seemed very interested in his mashed potatoes. Linda cleared her throat. Perhaps this isn't the best time. When is the best time? Vanessa's voice took on that familiar edge, the one that always preceded her most devastating blows. It's been over a year. We need to be realistic about these things. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Excuse me, I managed to say, though my throat felt like it was closing up. I need some air. The back porch had always been my sanctuary in the Winslow family home. It's where I used to sit with Oliver during these weekly dinners, making up stories about the constellations. He'd always insisted that the Big Dipper was actually a giant robot arm reaching down to scoop up star soup. The door creaked open behind me. Harper. It was Ethan. I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would. Don't. I wrapped my arms around myself, fighting against the autumn chill. Just don't make excuses for her. Not this time. He stepped closer, and I could feel his internal struggle, the architect in him always trying to fix things, to make broken pieces fit together again. She's not thinking clearly. With Alex's college applications and their financial situation, our son's memory isn't her personal piggy bank, I snapped, finally turning to face him. In the dim porch light, I could see the pain in his eyes matching my own. And you know what makes it worse? She's not even doing this for Alex. She's doing it because she can't stand that we had something she couldn't touch. Inside, I could hear Vanessa's voice rising, probably defending herself to Linda and Charles. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Greg slipping out the front door, likely heading for his usual cigarette escape. "I want to leave," I said quietly. "Now." Ethan nodded, but before we could move, Vanessa's voice carried through the open window. "It's not healthy, the way they're holding on to everything. Oliver wouldn't have wanted." Something snapped inside me. The grief I'd been carefully managing for 14 months transformed into something else entirely. Something darker. Something that whispered that maybe it was time Vanessa learned what it felt like to lose something precious. I turned to Ethan, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "Your sister just made a terrible mistake." He must have seen something change in my expression because he took a step back. "Harper." But I was already walking back inside, my mind racing with possibilities. Vanessa had always been so proud of her perfect life, her perfect image. Perhaps it was time someone showed everyone what lay beneath that carefully constructed facade. After all, she'd just given me permission to be practical about family matters. The morning after the dinner disaster, I found myself sitting in my classroom, staring at 30 blank journals I'd bought for my creative writing students. Usually, these empty pages filled me with possibility. Today, they just reminded me of all the stories Oliver would never write. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ethan. "Mom wants to host a makeup dinner this weekend. Says we need to clear the air." I switched off my phone without responding. Clear the air? The air was perfectly clear. Vanessa had shown exactly who she was, and no amount of Linda's famous pot roast was going to fix that. A knock at my classroom door startled me. Greg, of all people, stood there, looking as out of place in a high school as his vintage band t-shirt suggested. "Harper?
Got a minute?"
I gestured to an empty student desk, watching as he folded his lanky frame into it. Greg had always been the family outlier, the struggling musician who'd somehow caught the attention of status-obsessed Vanessa. "Look," he started, running a hand through his graying hair. "About last night. If Vanessa sent you. She doesn't know I'm here." He shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, she doesn't know a lot of things these days." Something in his tone made me pause. "What do you mean?" "The Yale thing." Greg leaned forward, lowering his voice. "It's not just about Alex's future. Vanessa's been, well, let's just say her real estate commission checks aren't matching the lifestyle she's broadcasting on social media." The revelation hit me like a splash of cold water. She's in financial trouble? Remember that luxury condo listing she was bragging about last month? It fell through. Third big deal this year to collapse. He glanced at the door, as if expecting Vanessa to materialize. But she already put down deposits on Alex's prep courses, college consultants, the works. Using money we don't have. I thought about Vanessa's designer outfits, her new car, the lavish Sweet 16 party she was planning for Alex. All while eyeing Oliver's college fund like a vulture. "Why are you telling me this?" Greg's face darkened. "Because last night wasn't about helping Alex. It was about saving face. And I'm tired of watching her tear people down to build herself up." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Linda. "Family meeting. Tonight. Non-negotiable." Greg spotted the message and winced. "Good luck with that. I'd come for moral support, but I've got a gig." "How convenient," I muttered. "Hey." He stood up, adjusting his leather jacket. "Just remember something. Vanessa's never gotten over the fact that you got the good brother." The family meeting was exactly as excruciating as I'd expected. Linda had arranged everyone in the living room like pieces on a chessboard, Vanessa and I on opposite couches, Ethan between us, Charles in his armchair playing referee. "We're family," Linda insisted, passing around coffee nobody wanted. "We need to work through this." Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I only meant to help. Harper's always been so sensitive." Sensitive. The word shot out before I could stop it. "You tried to raid my dead son's college fund." "That's not fair," Vanessa protested. "Alex is family too. Oliver would have wanted." "Don't." My voice came out sharp enough to crack glass. "Don't you dare tell me what my son would have wanted." Ethan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The movement caught Vanessa's eye, and something shifted in her expression, a flash of satisfaction at the distance between us. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money. Vanessa wasn't just trying to solve her financial problems. She was trying to prove something. To drive a wedge between Ethan and me. To show everyone that perfect Harper wasn't so perfect after all. You know what? I stood up, surprising everyone, including myself. You're right, Linda. We are family. And family should know everything about each other. Every secret. Every lie. Every hidden truth. Vanessa's face went pale. What are you talking about? I smiled, thinking of Greg's visit. Why don't we start with your real estate business, Vanessa? I hear things aren't quite as successful as you've been claiming. The room went silent. In that moment, looking at Vanessa's stricken face, I realized something else. This wasn't going to end with just one family meeting. This was war. You need to see this. Melissa slid her laptop across the coffee shop table, her lawyer face firmly in place. I'd known her since college, and that expression usually preceded bad news. The screen showed a series of bank statements. Not mine, Vanessa's. How did you? Greg came to my office yesterday. Melissa cut in, stirring her untouched latte. He's thinking about divorce. Wanted to know his options. These records are interesting. I scrolled through the transactions, each one making my stomach twist tighter. Designer clothes, spa treatments, expensive restaurants. But what caught my eye were the regular transfers to an account labeled Alex's Future. That's their college fund, I murmured. Was their college fund? Melissa tapped the screen. Look at the withdrawals. The numbers told a story that made me feel sick. Vanessa hadn't just been dipping into Alex's college fund, she'd nearly drained it. All while eyeing Oliver's money like it was her personal backup plan. There's more, Melissa said quietly. Remember that charity fundraiser she organized last spring? The one for children's cancer research. My head snapped up. The one she dedicated to Oliver? Melissa's silence was answer enough. I remembered how Vanessa had stood at the podium, tears in her eyes, talking about her beloved nephew and the importance of supporting pediatric cancer research. The event had raised over $50,000. The charity never received the full amount, Melissa said. Only about $10,000 made it to the foundation. The rest disappeared into Vanessa's accounts. I finished feeling numb. My phone buzzed, Ethan asking where I was. We were supposed to meet his parents for lunch. I ignored it. Harper. Melissa reached across the table, closing the laptop. What are you going to do with this information? Before I could answer, someone called my name. I looked up to see Alex, Vanessa's son, approaching our table. At 16, he was all gangly limbs and uncertain smiles, so different from his mother's calculated perfection. Aunt Harper? Mom said you weren't feeling well, but I saw you through the window. He shifted awkwardly. I actually wanted to talk to you about something. Melissa gathered her things, squeezing my shoulder as she left. Alex took her seat, fiddling with a paper napkin. It's about the college fund thing, he said finally. Mom keeps talking about Yale, but I don't want to go there. I blinked. You don't. I want to study music production. Maybe go to Berkeley. He smiled slightly. Like Dad. Mom says it's a waste of money, that I need a real degree from a real school. But it's your life. I finished softly, thinking of Oliver's crayon-drawn Harvard application. He'd wanted to be an astronaut that week. Yeah. Alex looked down. I found some paperwork in Mom's office. About my college fund. There's hardly anything left, is there? The hurt in his voice made my chest ache. Alex. It's okay. I kind of knew. The way she's been acting, the fights with Dad. He straightened up suddenly. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Could you maybe not tell anyone? About Yale? Mom's already stressed about money, and if people found out. I stared at him. This kid trying to protect the mother who'd betrayed him. The mother who'd used my dead son's memory to cover up her own lies. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Linda. Where are you? Vanessa has big news to share. Something cold settled in my stomach. I could picture it already. Vanessa announcing Alex's acceptance to Yale, using it to distract from her financial troubles. pushing her son into a life he didn't want just to maintain her perfect image. I have to go, I told Alex, standing up. But we'll talk more about this, okay? He nodded, relief evident on his face. As I walked out, I made a decision. This wasn't just about Oliver anymore, or even about me. It was about stopping Vanessa before she destroyed more lives with her lies. I pulled out my phone and called Ethan. "We need to talk," I said when he answered. "About your sister. And this time, you're going to have to choose a side." The box of Oliver's things sat untouched in our bedroom closet for 14 months. But after showing Ethan the bank statements and explaining everything I'd learned, I found myself pulling it out while he paced our room, processing the revelations about his sister. "We can't just expose her," he said, running his hands through his hair. "Think about Alex." I lifted Oliver's favorite dinosaur t-shirt from the box, the fabric still soft despite countless washes. "Alex is exactly why we have to do something. She's destroying his future to maintain her lies." "Harper." Ethan's voice carried that familiar note of caution. The architect in him, always trying to find the perfect balance. "Maybe we should talk to her first, give her a chance to." My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Vanessa just told us the wonderful news about Alex's early acceptance to Yale. We're so proud." The dinosaur shirt slipped from my fingers. "She's already started," I whispered, showing Ethan the message. "She's building her lie bigger, making it harder for Alex to escape." Before Ethan could respond, another text came through, this time from Greg. "She's planning to announce it at the charity gala next week. The one honoring Oliver." I'm sorry. The charity gala. The annual event where Vanessa played the grieving aunt, using my son's memory to boost her social standing. And now she was going to use it to trap her own son in her web of lies. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my keys. I drove without thinking, ending up at Oliver's favorite park. The swing set where he used to pretend he could fly stood empty in the fading light. As I walked toward it, I spotted a familiar figure on one of the benches, Alex, hunched over his phone. He looked up as I approached. "Mom's telling everyone about Yale," he said quietly. "Grandmother called to congratulate me." I sat beside him, watching a group of kids play basketball nearby. "What are you going to do?" "What can I do?" His laugh was bitter, so unlike his usual self. "The application deadline for Berkeley passed last week."
Mom.
She hid the forms I'd filled out. Said she was protecting me from making a mistake. Something inside me snapped. Not the hot, angry break from before, but a cold, clear certainty. "What if you could still go?" "To Berkeley?" Alex turned to me, confusion evident on his face.
"How?"
I thought about Oliver's college fund, still sitting untouched. About how he'd loved music, always dancing to Greg's guitar playing at family gatherings. About how he'd want his money to help someone chase their dreams, not enable more lies. "Let me worry about that," I said. "But first, I need you to be sure. Really sure. Because what happens next? It's going to change everything." My phone buzzed again, Ethan calling. I ignored it. "I'm sure," Alex said firmly. "I'm tired of pretending to be who she wants me to be." When I got home, Ethan was waiting with an expression I'd never seen before. "Vanessa called," he said. "She knows you were talking to Alex. She's threatening to sell Oliver's story to that true crime podcast that's been contacting us. Says if we expose her finances, she'll tell everyone her version of what happened that day at the pool." The world tilted sideways. Nobody in the family talked about that day, about how Vanessa had been watching Oliver while I was at a writing conference. About how she'd been too busy on her phone to notice him slip away. She wouldn't. I breathed, but I knew better. Vanessa would burn everything down to protect her image. Ethan reached for me, but I stepped back. "We have to choose," I said.
"Right now."
"Between protecting Oliver's memory and exposing the truth." "Harper."
"No."
My voice was steady despite the storm inside. "I'm done letting her use our son as a weapon. If she wants to tell her version, let her. But first, she's going to learn what it really means to lose everything." I pulled out my phone and dialed Melissa's number. "Remember that evidence about the charity money? It's time. And Melissa? Make it public." Sometimes, Protecting what matters means being willing to watch everything else burn. The annual charity gala was Vanessa's moment to shine, but tonight, the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hotel ballroom cast shadows that felt more like judgment than glamour. I watched her work the room, her designer dress catching the light as she shared her fabricated tale of Alex's Yale acceptance with anyone who would listen. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. We don't have to do this here. But we did. Because Vanessa had chosen this place, this event dedicated to Oliver's memory, to cement her lies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Melissa's text lit up my phone. Documents are ready. Just say when. I spotted Alex at the bar, nursing a glass of soda, his shoulders tense as another well-wisher congratulated him on Yale. Greg caught my eye from across the room and gave a slight nod. Everything was in place. Linda clinked her glass, calling for attention. Before Vanessa makes her special announcement, I'd like to thank everyone for supporting our family's charity work in memory of our beloved Oliver. My chest tightened. Oliver, who would never get to choose his future, who would never have his dreams stolen by someone else's lies. And now, Linda continued, Vanessa has some wonderful news about Alex's future. I stood up, my chair scraping against the marble floor. Actually, I have something to say first. The room fell silent. Vanessa's perfectly composed smile flickered. Harper, she warned, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I pulled out my phone, hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Because while we're all here celebrating Oliver's memory, there's something you should know about last year's charity funds. Charles stepped forward, ever the patriarch trying to maintain order. Harper, please. $40,000, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. That's how much never made it to the Children's Cancer Research Foundation. Would you like to explain where it went, Vanessa? The color drained from her face. You're lying. The bank records say otherwise. I turned to the crowd. The same records that show how she drained Alex's college fund to maintain her lifestyle. The same Alex she's now forcing into Yale against his wishes. Gasps and whispers filled the room. Alex straightened at the bar, something like hope crossing his face. You want to talk about bank records? Vanessa's voice turned sharp, desperate. Let's talk about that day at the pool. About how you left Oliver with me when you knew. When I knew what? The words came out like ice. That you'd be too busy chasing real estate deals to watch him? That you'd lie about checking on him every 15 minutes. Ethan stood beside me, his presence steady. Vanessa, stop. No. She whirled on him. She's trying to destroy me, and you're letting her. I'm your sister, and Oliver was your nephew. My voice cracked. But that didn't stop you from using his memory to fund your lies. Linda stepped between us, but it was too late. Vanessa lunged forward, grabbing my phone. In the struggle, she knocked over a glass of wine, staining her pristine dress crimson. Show them the rest, she hissed. Show them how you've been investigating me, plotting against me. Show them what a perfect, grieving mother you really are. Mom, stop. Alex's voice cut through the chaos. He stood there looking younger than his 16 years. Just stop lying, please. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa looked around the room, at the faces of friends and family now clouded with doubt and disappointment. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling. You'll regret this, she whispered, but her voice shook. All of you. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving behind a room full of shocked witnesses and shattered illusions. I felt Ethan's arm around me, steadying me as my legs threatened to give out. We'd done it. We'd exposed the truth. But as I looked at Alex's lost expression, at Linda's tears, at Charles's rigid disappointment, I wondered, at what cost? Greg approached, holding out a folded paper. Found this in Vanessa's office while she was getting ready. It's from Oliver's last day. Maybe you should read it. My hands trembled as I took it, recognizing my son's messy handwriting. Sometimes victory feels a lot like loss. The morning after the gala, I found Oliver's memorial garden destroyed. His favorite blue hydrangeas torn from the earth, the small stone bench overturned, and the plaque with his name spray-painted black. But what broke me wasn't the destruction. It was the Yale acceptance letter left in the middle of it all. Alex's name crossed out and replaced with Oliver's. I stood there, still in my pajamas, as morning dew soaked through my slippers. Ethan came running out when he heard my scream. "I'll call the police," he said, already dialing. "Don't." My voice sounded hollow, even to me. "We both know who did this." His hand dropped. "Harper. She won." The words tasted like ash. "Is that what you want to hear, Vanessa? You won." I shouted at the empty street, not caring who heard. Ethan tried to pull me inside, but I shrugged him off. I started picking up the scattered plants, my hands trembling. These flowers were the same shade as Oliver's eyes. He used to say they looked like little pieces of sky falling to earth. My phone buzzed, Linda calling again. I'd been ignoring the family's messages since last night, but this time I answered. "Have you seen the news?" Her voice shook. I hadn't. I'd been too focused on the garden. But when I opened my laptop, there it was. Local charity fraud scandal claims unexpected victim. The article detailed how Alex, distraught over the revelations about his mother and college fund, had attempted to run away last night. He'd been found at the bus station, hypothermic and scared. "He's asking for you," Linda said quietly. I closed the laptop. "I can't, Harper. I did this." The words came out choked. I was so focused on justice, on protecting Oliver's memory, that I hurt another child instead. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Greg standing there, looking worse than I felt. Ethan let him in while I stayed rooted to the couch, still clutching my phone. "Alex told me everything," Greg said, sitting heavily across from me. "About the music school. About how he was afraid to tell anyone what he really wanted." He pulled out a folded paper, Oliver's letter from the gala. "Have you read it yet?" I shook my head. I couldn't bring myself to open it last night. "You should." He stood up, looking older than his 40 years. "And Harper? Vanessa's gone. Took everything from our accounts and disappeared. She left a note saying she's going to make sure everyone knows the truth about that day at the pool." My stomach lurched. "Greg, Save it." His voice was tired rather than angry. "We all failed these kids, didn't we? You, me, Vanessa. We were so caught up in our adult drama that we forgot what really mattered." After he left, I finally opened Oliver's letter with shaking hands. It was dated the morning of the pool incident, written in his messy 8-year-old scrawl. "Dear Aunt Vanessa, thank you for watching me today. Mom says you're sad because people don't see how hard you work. But I see you. You're like the moon. Sometimes you hide, but you're always there. Can we have pizza for lunch? Love, Oliver." The paper slipped from my fingers. All this time, I'd been fighting to protect Oliver's memory, but I'd twisted it into something he would have hated. My sweet boy, who saw good in everyone, even in Vanessa's hidden parts. Ethan found me still sitting there an hour later, staring at nothing. "The police called," he said softly. "They want to talk to us about pressing charges over the garden." I thought about Alex at the bus station, about Oliver's letter, about how revenge had poisoned everything it touched. "No," I whispered. "No more destruction. Oliver wouldn't want." My voice broke as a wave of nausea hit me. I barely made it to the bathroom in time. As I knelt on the cold tile, Ethan holding my hair back, I remembered something I'd been too stressed to notice. I was late. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of timing. The pregnancy test sat on my bathroom counter like a time bomb when Melissa called. "Vanessa's back. She's at Oliver's Memorial Park." Of course she was. Where else would she go to deliver whatever final blow she'd planned? "I'm calling the police," Melissa said.
No.
I grabbed my keys. "This ends between us." The Memorial Park was 3 blocks from our house, a small playground with Oliver's name on a bronze plaque. Even before I saw her, I heard Vanessa's voice carrying across the empty swings. "I knew you'd come." She sat on the bench where I used to read to Oliver, a manila envelope in her lap. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her perfect makeup gone. Couldn't resist one last confrontation. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She laughed, a hollow sound. Want? I wanted my son to be successful. I wanted my family's respect. I wanted to stop being the screw-up sister who married a failing musician while perfect Harper got everything. I lost my child, and I lost myself. She stood up, envelope clutched to her chest. Every day, watching you and Ethan, seeing how everyone rallied around her grief She swallowed hard. Do you know what it's like, being the one who survived that day? The one everyone blamed.
I never blamed.
You didn't have to. It was in every look, every conversation. Poor Harper lost her son, while I was just the careless aunt who checked her phone instead of watching him. The playground felt smaller suddenly, the weight of unspoken words pressing in. A car door slammed nearby, Greg getting out of his truck.
He must have followed me.
I have proof, Vanessa continued, pulling papers from the envelope. Phone records from that day. Texts from you, asking me to watch him even though you knew I had an important client meeting. You are just as responsible. Stop. Greg's voice cut through her words. Just stop, Vanessa. She whirled on him. You don't understand. I need them to know. That you're hurting? I stepped closer. We know. We've always known. But this isn't about Oliver anymore, is it? Everything is about Oliver. She threw the papers, letting them scatter in the wind.
He saw me, really saw me.
That stupid letter. He was the only one who ever. Her voice broke. Greg moved toward her, but she backed away. I can't give you absolution, Vanessa, I said quietly. But I can give you this. I pulled out the pregnancy test from my pocket. I'm carrying your niece or nephew, and I need to know, does this child get an aunt, or does it get another war? The silence stretched between us, broken only by the creaking of empty swings. I found Alex's Berkeley application, Greg said softly. The one you hid. He's got real talent, Vanessa.
Like me.
Is that what scared you? Vanessa's shoulders slumped. For the first time since Oliver's death, I saw her. Really saw her. Not the perfect sister-in-law, not the vengeful antagonist, but someone as broken as I was, just wearing different scars. I don't know how to be anything else, she whispered. Then learn. I touched my stomach. For this baby, for Alex, for Oliver, who saw the good in you even when you couldn't see it yourself. She looked at the scattered papers, at Greg's extended hand, at my still flat belly. Something shifted in her expression, not surrender, exactly, but exhaustion. The kind that comes before healing can begin. Alex wants to study music production, she said finally, her voice small. I know. I stepped closer. Oliver's college fund. It should go to someone who'll use it to create something beautiful. Greg's hand found Vanessa's shoulder. This time, she didn't pull away. I'm so tired, she breathed. Then let's rest, I said, thinking of Oliver's letter, of new life growing inside me, of the long road ahead. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. The sun was setting behind the playground equipment, casting long shadows that looked almost like children playing. Somewhere, I hoped, Oliver was watching. And maybe, just maybe, he was smiling. 6 months later, I stood in Oliver's restored memorial garden, my growing belly visible beneath my sweater. The hydrangeas were blooming again, tiny blue stars against the spring soil. Alex sat cross-legged nearby, strumming Greg's old guitar while recording ideas for his Berkeley application. That sounds beautiful, I said, recognizing hints of the lullaby I used to sing to Oliver. It's for the baby, Alex replied, not looking up. And for Oliver. I thought maybe they could share it. The sound of gravel crunching made us both turn. Vanessa stood at the garden entrance, looking smaller somehow in jeans and a simple sweater. Her therapy sessions had stripped away the designer armor she'd hidden behind for so long. The flowers came back, she said softly. They always do. I touched my stomach as the baby kicked. Nature's stubborn that way. Alex packed up his guitar, kissing my cheek before heading inside. He and Vanessa exchanged careful nods, their relationship still tender, healing slowly like everything else. I found something else, Vanessa said, once he was gone. In my old office files. She pulled out a water-stained envelope. It's from that day. I never opened it. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside was a crayon drawing, stick figures of our whole family, Oliver's last artwork. He'd labeled everyone Mommy, Daddy, Aunt Nessa, Uncle Greg, Alex. Above us all, he'd drawn a huge moon. Like your letter, I whispered. About you being the moon. Harper, I know. And I did. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can transform into something else. Something that reminds us we survived. The back door opened and Ethan emerged with Linda and Charles. They carried boxes of Oliver's old toys, the ones we'd finally decided to donate to the children's hospital. Each item had been carefully cleaned, photographed, and logged in a memory book we'd made. Ready? Ethan asked, his free hand finding the small of my back. I nodded, watching Vanessa pick up a box without being asked. She'd been doing that lately, showing up, helping, trying to rebuild trust one small action at a time. I have the nursery photos, Linda said, her iPad ready. If you want to see the final design? We gathered around, looking at the room Ethan had architected. He'd incorporated subtle nods to Oliver, constellation wallpaper, a tiny toy dinosaur painted into the mural, a music box that played that same lullaby Alex was working on. It's perfect, I said, meaning it. The baby's lucky, Vanessa murmured, to have all this love waiting. So were we, I replied, meeting her eyes. We just forgot sometimes. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat in the nursery's rocking chair. The moon cast shadows through the window, dancing across the constellation wallpaper. I thought about Oliver's drawing, about how he saw us all connected under the same sky. My phone lit up with a text from Melissa. Alex's Berkeley application is ready. Want to review it tomorrow? Another message followed, this one from Greg. Vanessa asked about family counseling. Together. All of us. And finally, from Vanessa herself. Thank you for letting me be the moon again. I closed my eyes, feeling the baby move. We decided not to learn the gender, but somehow I knew, a girl. A fresh start, but not a replacement. Never that. Your brother drew us a picture, I whispered to my belly. He knew something I forgot, that family isn't about being perfect. It's about being there, even when we're hiding, even when we're scared. The nursery door creaked open. Ethan stood there, holding Oliver's favorite stuffed dinosaur, the one we'd decided to keep. Room for one more? He asked. I patted my stomach, smiling. Always room for one more. He placed the dinosaur on the windowsill, where moonlight made its shadow look almost alive. Together, we watched the stars emerge, each one a tiny light in the darkness, each one a reminder that even after the longest night, morning comes. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to look, we find that the light was there all along, waiting for us to notice.